Testing 1, 2. Ah, here we go. Here we go. Now I have audio, right? 2 hour stream, no audio. Yeah, let's do it. I'm not sure why that happened. But then I was stuffing around with some USB stuff on my computer, so maybe I accidentally changed what port that microphone was on, and it wasn't hooked up properly to my OBS. Don't know exactly how OBS does all of that stuff. All right. Okay, cool. People can hear me now. So, I was saying, hello Dean, how's it going? I don't know if people necessarily remember this or not, but Dean Wonder, who is there, you can see because he's a moderator, um, was whatchamacallit, was one of the senior tutors, I'd say, in Comp 1511, and also lectured the UNSW global version of the course. So if anyone here is not from the School of Computer Science and Engineering at UNSW, that's the course that I teach. I'm kind of assuming that most people are from that, but I don't know. I do have another friend who just pinged me the other day and said that they were enjoying watching me play video games, which I think is pretty cool. Kaichi's saying you just downloaded OBS last night and it feels like magic. OBS is pretty cool. Like, sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes it's just seamless and easy. But every now and then it gets fiddly. But I mean, I think that's like a byproduct of how much shit do you plug into one computer and expect to work? Like, that's it's always like, oh, I would like to plug in 8 different USB devices, all have an audio connection in some way, and expect the audio to come out the right one. I always get fiddly stuff like that because like every single video conferencing software has its own connection to the audio. It doesn't use the default audio, so it's just like Discord's always connected to my headset. OBS is always connected to my microphone, although not today. So, yeah. Shrey said OBS is awesome for tutoring, and Abraham was saying, and it's free. So yeah, I can understand the positives there. Oh, I had a funny thing today. Right, so I actually did some work at UNSW today, which is actually kind of rare for me. I do most of my work at home. Got used to it over 2020 when we were obviously encouraged not to go into the office. But now we can kind of go into the office, like it's reasonably safe. And I ran into a friend there who I hadn't seen for like more than a year. And it was pretty funny because I was like talking about, like, I think it's kind of funny. I feel like my cat is sometimes more famous than the majority of the lecturers at UNSW. And she was like, "You mean chicken?" And I was like, "How do you know the name of my cat?" And she's like, "Oh, I've heard it around." And I was like, "Oh my God." Like, she doesn't work with students directly very much. She's like an admin person and stuff, and she's not in engineering nor in CSE. And I'm just like, oh my God. My cat has become so famous that they've crossed over other boundaries, and just random people at UNSW know about chicken now. So I appreciate that. I think that's a lot of fun. Let me just actually, no. I was about to test. I don't know what level of latency latency we're on now. That's all right. If people chat to me, I will get to it eventually. Because I was just like, it took a while before I noticed, but maybe it's like took a while before I noticed that there was no audio going through, rather than how long it took you to notice there was no audio going through, which I think people picked up on very, very quickly. Okay. So today, the thing that I wanted to talk about today is one of the things, like, if you've watched the intro video, I think if you're a subscriber to my channel, the intro video auto plays for you all the time. So you may have had to watch the Marc on Mondays intro video multiple times. But today we're actually going to talk a little bit about one of the things that I was going to do for Marc on Mondays, which was force students to battle each other. It's not exactly that, but it is. But not exactly. And so I wanted to talk about the competitions. I actually made some slides. And the usual way, obviously, that people make slides is that I rushed home at about 5-ish, and then I started making slides. And so, like, I had like 1 hour to make a set of slides, and then eat some dinner and then go to stream, because like I think this is how people do it. I'm pretty sure, having supervised several students over the years, I'm pretty sure that people are only productive in the 1 hour before they have to meet their supervisor and explain to their supervisor what they're actually working on. So this is what I'm actually using you as, in a sense, a group of my students, as a kind of a supervisor. So what I do is, like, sometime earlier in the week, I commit to having some kind of preparation done, and then I have to report on it. I mean, like, some weeks it's like just play a game, so it's not that big a deal. But then some weeks like this, it's like, all right, tell people about the competition. That means you're gonna have to formalize exactly what you're talking about, and also be ready to call it be ready to present the idea in at least some kind of cohesive format. Hi Zach, how's it going? So Zach is the person who's going to be doing doing some of the back end dev for this particular project. Is that chicken? Oh, I thought I heard something out there. I'm not sure if it was her scratching a little scratching pole out there. Oh, I show it to you now, but it's kind of meaningless for now until if we get lucky and something happens later. But I set up chicken cam. So that's the seat that she loves sitting on. That camera is live. When she comes in and sits there, which I hope that she will do sometime during this evening, I will turn on chicken cam. Dean, having supervised several students, understatement of the year. What are my numbers at the moment? I think in the time I've been at UNSW, from the start of 2019 up until now, I've taught 5,000 students, roughly. That's a lot of people. I think a significant number of people can probably go through their entire lives, a full entire life, without having talked to that many people. I got my quota of meeting people up very, very high in the last couple of years. Hamish was saying, Kaichi, just saw your TypeScript workshop. How advanced will it get? Got a lot of TypeScript experience, wondering how advanced the workshop is. Ooh, I don't know. We'll see. Abraham, are you a pro streamer or something? Well, I mean, like, I have said this before, that I am technically a pro streamer because I stream my lectures, and that is my salary, my professional salary as a lecturer. A significant portion of the work I do goes into streaming, so definitely pro streamer. I've actually turned off monetization on this channel. I turned it on at one point, and then I thought, I don't know. You know, it just didn't feel like it. And heaps of the stuff I was doing here had this kind of pseudo-academic sort of feel to it, which meant that it sort of didn't have to, like it sort of felt a little bit part of the job. And, like, if I was going to take time out of the work that I was doing otherwise to spend on this, it still would be valid, and it still would be part of what I do for my work, I guess. Who else is here? Nicole's here. Hope you're having a great night, she says. Thank you very much, Nicole. Hope you're having a great night as well. I've had a fun night. I crammed out about 20 slides in an hour. They're not super high quality slides, but I snuck in one meme, so, you know, getting somewhere. Zach said, speaking of lots of students, have you seen 1521 enrollments this term? Equal to 1511 21T1 with a 75 wait list. So you're at 950 now, I would say. We started at 940, I think. So, yeah. And that makes sense, because especially if you don't realize what the prereqs are and what different subjects you can do, 1521 always appears to be the correct one to do after 1511, even though you could do either of the 25 courses directly after 1511. So heaps of people there. And yeah, as Abraham's saying, the funnel from 1511 into the other subjects is definitely there and definitely real. I think we had just a bit of a slow year last year, just for obvious reasons. A lot of people didn't want to study. A lot of people were locked overseas and couldn't quite get here and stuff. And, like, we finally got to the point last year where international students could still actually study. So for the first term, we weren't prepared for it at all. And now I think we've got a lot of local students who maybe last year thought, given the pandemic and stuff, maybe take a year off and then come back in. And so we've got a lot of people. I don't know if it's going to go up or down next year. Oh, Shrey's saying you can only do 2521 after 1511, not 2511. Well, those numbers make perfect sense to me. let's let's do the higher number one first and then come back to the other one. Wait, 1531 gang Ford's saying. Wait, you can do 1531? Hamish is saying 1521. Oh, hello. Someone's here, but like she's totally not the chicken cam isn't working. She's gone for my lap instead. Let's just move this camera a bit. Oh, she's looking straight at the camera. Hello. Oh, people are trying to get into other courses, but the wait lists are full and stuff. Yeah, oh, I can't speak officially for CSE and stuff, but like a lot of us, when we're running the subjects, we watch those wait lists. And if we can, like, you know, last minute find more space to teach in and stuff like that, we do add to those courses. So people will be watching. John Shepherd and Andrew Taylor, who are the lecturers who are in charge of those things, are also watching. I mean, like, I'm obviously not going to offer you any guarantees that you're going to get into a course or anything like that. I have no power to affect that in any way, but I know that people watch those wait lists and they do want to make sure that everyone can do the courses they need to do. Zach's asking what mic that is. This is a Rode NT USB. So it's a Rode mic, which is a high quality mic, but it's a USB plug-in one because like I knew that I was just going to use it on a computer all the time. So I just got one of those instead of one of the ones we used to use when we were like recording professional audio and stuff like that. I couldn't be bothered plugging all that in, so I figured I'd just get a nice USB one. Dean's laughing at me roasting course numbers. And people are saying hello to chicken. They're saying hello to you, chickie. Math 1131 question, prove the transitive property on UNSW course codes. I think that, yeah, you might not be able to do that. I asked John Shepherd in the AMA about course codes, and he said they made perfect sense. That's what Shrey was saying. That's pretty funny. Hamish, like, what the fuck is transitive? So Hamish, if you add 1 and 2 together, you get 3, and if you add 2 and 1 together, you get 3. But if you divide 3 by 1, you still get 3. But if you divide 1 by 3, you get a third, right? So division is not transitive, so it doesn't go both directions, but addition is transitive. It's like, I don't know if you've done like full-on maths, matrices are not transitive either. I was about to start teaching graphics then, but I'm going to teach graphics next term instead. But like we do the difference between transitive and intransitive transformation matrices in graphics. And people are, oh no, now everyone's talking about the wait lists they can't get into. Oh no. Peter was the person that asked Jazz about the course codes. I think it's a funny one because technically Jazz is organizing all of the course codes. Oh, Zach is like, isn't that symmetry? Or maybe it's not. Which one would not? That's not transitive, is it? Commutative? I don't know. You know, yeah, Hamish is like commutative. Yeah, I got it mixed up. Associative, commutative, transitive. Like, these are the kinds of things where, like, I will remember that some things do something, but not what name it is. I think you notice that in my teaching where I'm just like, don't get caught up in the jargon, just learn how to do the thing. And Ford's like, you love the course codes because all your friends from other unis don't get it when you talk about the course codes. You know who else doesn't get it when you talk about the course codes? Yeah, this guy. This guy doesn't get it because, like, I don't read the course codes that much. And it's really funny because for me to identify courses a lot of the time, I have to get someone to tell me who's teaching it. And I go, oh, it's that person's course. That's the one with those thingies in it. But yeah, I kind of would love it if we would just talk about courses by their names. rather than the course codes. Because the course codes are just like completely arbitrary numbers, and I have to keep remembering what's what or what's not. Mike Griven says, when's Daniel Mansfield coming to the stream? I should give him a call. That would be really funny if I just called him right now. Like, he's probably like having dinner with his family or something like that. I'm not about to do that. That was a joke, by the way. If I'm going to put Daniel on a public stream, I will probably tell him in advance, not just call him out of the blue. Well, that was like totally like thinking about like when K-pop artists go live and they always call their bandmates and they just call them up and put them on the screen and stuff like that. It's pretty funny. Zach is thinking of A equals B, B equals C minus I. Oh no, you think transitive is the implication then that A equals C. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Because it's actually the right Latin word. Like, like transfer. Like, one property transfers from one to the other, I think. Maybe. Anyway. Impromptu mukbang with Daniel Mansfield. I keep thinking how funny it would be to do a mukbang on this channel where I just sit here and eat. I think that would be very, very silly, but also very funny. Okay, so I'm not actually going for a record today of how long I can stay on slide 1, because I did that already a couple of weeks ago, and I've already won that game. And Nicole said the last YouTube collab that we did was pretty epic. I think that was... Which one was that one? Was that the one where we started on his stream, and then his computer couldn't handle the Zoom thing, right, of the two of us on a Zoom being broadcast from his computer, because he basically uses like a 1970s calculator as his computer. So we switched over to my stream and we talked for ages via a Zoom call, and then I think he went to bed and I stayed up with people for like another 2 hours or something. Yeah, I should totally do that. Who's that? Sonny was saying that mukbangs with Mark. I should just do something called a Markbang. Oh no, that sounds wrong. No, we're not going to do a mukbang. Mukbang. Okay. Abraham said we're going for a record on slide 2. We're still on slide 1 right now. Okay. So, what I want to talk about, I actually have a lot of slides today. It's not quite a 2-hour thing worth of slides. So Chicken is like just sitting down there, but she's not sitting where the camera's aiming. I'm just like, I put the camera right up there, aimed at her favorite spot. And she's just not going there. She's like, I'll sit on your lap, I'll sit on the floor. She's looking at the spot though. I'm gonna turn on Chicken Cam. She's like just below it right now, just looking at it. We're just gonna wait. We're gonna wait. I'm gonna see if Chicken Cam is effective. I might just change the way it's aiming a little. She's totally denying me. She's just sitting below that chair and just kind of go, no, I'm chill. I'm fine. We'll see. I'm going to leave the camera on and you can tell me if she goes there. Oh, she's totally looking at... Oh, there we go. Wait, here it comes. There we are. Chicken on Chicken Cam. It worked. What are you doing, Chicken? This is more fun than watching me, I think. I think she's working on her project. You know how cats do that thing where they just go... Yeah, that's what she's doing now. Okay. That's good. Chicken Cam is working. Chicken's hanging out in the Chicken Cam. We are successful. Alright, so moving on. Moving on to what I'm actually doing, talking today. So, I made a promise that I was going to run some kind of competition. I'm going to see where this goes. The first part of the competition is going to be a an experiment. So this is going to be like just a bunch of volunteers, whoever wants to take part, and we will kind of nut out the format as we go. I've got a lot of plans in place for the format, but I don't necessarily have anything that I think can't be changed. And so we'll fiddle around with things uh, depending on how well things work. Oh, that's so cute. She's just doing a little project there. She puts a lot of work into that project. Okay, so let's go on. So I put a bunch of quotes through here. Extra points if people know where all the quotes are from. Some of them are super obvious. Some of them are, I don't know, as usual, something that someone my age would know. But some of these things are no longer quite as famous as they'd once been. Okay, so making competition for CSE students. Of course, you want to crush your students, see them driven before you, something, something, lamentations, something, something. I just love that line. It's the dumbest line ever, but also the funniest line ever. So obviously, crushing your students, making the majority of your students lose in a competition, because that's what every competition is. I've competed in lots of different things. Like, I used to occasionally compete in rock climbing and then cycling, and like, of course, I play a lot of miniatures games, really competitive, unnecessarily so sometimes. And I know that every competition, we always think of it as having one winner and a whole bunch of losers. So no one feels good except for one person at the end of it. So obviously this seems like a good morale building exercise, right? So the goal is we want to do like lots of programming, because I think a lot of people want to have practice programming, but what we want to do is like focus it in a sense, like give ourselves goals to work to, gives ourselves timelines to work to as well. So each round of the competition kind of will be a bit like sprints. So what I'm doing is I'm calling this thing a tournament, and a tournament with rounds. But I also want this thing to be accessible, right? I want this thing to be something that people can jump into, which is not like, competition's not that great for that. So it's kind of like, how do you modify a competition so that it is accessible, so that if people want to, they can like jump in at round 3 or something like that, or they can just jump in for one round, play around with for a bit, see what it's like, and then hop out again. So I need it to be something like that. And I have plans for the structure of this so that it will potentially work like that, but we'll see how it goes, because I think with anything, we're doing this kind of slowly growing iterative development thing. And if we're doing that, the later you join in, I think still the harder it's going to be. But that doesn't necessarily mean, that doesn't make it impossible. But it means there's still kind of a scaling up of how it goes. Oh, just having a bath. This chicken cam's pretty good. I'm watching it myself now. Okay, so here's the overall format of the tournament. So it's got multiple rounds. I threw in a number there, 6 rounds. I don't know if that is the number of rounds. It could make sense, and it really just depends on how we want it to run, and how long people can keep it up before they run out of steam, how difficult it gets, and how many rounds I actually have to run. So if every round's going to be different, I'm going to need to make sure that they're all interesting enough and they move from one round to the next in an interesting way. So I'm thinking each round is like 2 to 4 weeks. And it really depends. Some rounds maybe ought to be shorter than other rounds, depending on how hard or how much work there is. If we're running this through the school term, I think they need to be longer, because people have real work they want to do, like stuff that's actually for assignments and things like that. If I was doing this, like, and this is something I have thought of, if I was doing this as a course, there would be 2-week rounds, and then I would do 5 2-week rounds in the course, and it would be pretty funny. So, but anyway, each round I will give you the specs for a game. So I'll give you the rules for a game that your program has to play. and there will be a system set up, looking at you, Zach, for submitting your program. And so I think, especially in terms of accessibility for something like this, we would probably do it with C programs, because what I want is people who have done Comp 1511 last term and have done nothing else at CSE to still be able to enter this. There's going to be people who have studied more of different things who will probably beat you a lot of the time, but it doesn't matter because anyone who beats you, you get to get their code at the end of the round anyway. But, you know, I wanted to make it so that everyone can actually get involved. And Peter's saying Fury of Dracula 2.0, definitely. So Richard runs Fury of Dracula, which is a board game. I've actually got a copy of the real board game, where Dracula is trying to kind of run away from vampire hunters, and you can't exactly tell where Dracula is, but you can sort of track where he's been. And as the game goes on, if you can't catch Dracula in time, he starts to get more and more powerful, and then he starts hunting the hunters. It's a very good board game. It's very worth playing, especially if you like those kinds of board games where there's like one against many, which are kind of fun. It always works really well if you've got like the one kind of uber player in the group and everyone else is just kind of like cooperative, having fun and stuff like that, but there's one person who's always getting too competitive. You just get them to play Dracula and it kind of is competitive, you know. Hamish wants to know if there's any chance of helping with the infrastructure in the back end. If you want to, yeah, because this is like it's kind of like unpaid work. Because we're not making any money out of it, and this is like an open student thing. So if you're interested in doing backend instead of entering the competition, then ping me. Are you on the Discord, Hamish? And Shrey's saying we could probably open source it. So we could open source the course infrastructure, definitely. I think that would be interesting. So we can make it for us, but we can make it so other people can use it for other competitions. Like, there was no chance, there was absolutely no chance that I was going to make this and not give it to CSE Soc, you know? Like, we were just basically using CSE Soc people to make it. So if we're going to do that, we'll obviously be giving the code to them so they can run other stuff in the future with it, because CSE Soc runs their own competitions sometimes as well. And Zach's saying open source, and pretty much Zach's going to be in charge of most of the code for this anyway. So if you want in, Hamish, just ping me. Yes, I know. And you said you would like to compete too. I don't actually see that being too much of a problem, because writing the infrastructure for how this thing works and competing in it are two different things. And if the infrastructure is open source anyway, it's not really going to be in a situation where knowing the infrastructure gives you an advantage. Like, all we do, I think, in that case is when I'm setting up the rules for the next round of the competition, you just won't see that bit. And that's the bit that goes on a separate private branch and then gets rolled in when the next round starts. Because I'll have a plan. I actually do have a plan, and I'll show you because I've got examples today. Like, this is like a full-on lecture. I did okay here, right? I actually, in 1 hour, put together what's potentially like 2 hours worth of content. So I must be either getting better at it, or when it's informal like this, I'm not as careful with my slides. I just like hammer it out. Dean, Hamish put a backdoor in the infra. Shrey is like, if name equals Hamish, winner equals true. Good stuff, good stuff. I will recommend you all to do the cybersecurity courses. Obviously, very good at setting up backdoors into systems. Okay. So, what this is the round goes for a couple of weeks, and in that time, people get to develop stuff. And then every time you develop something, you submit it. And then the system itself plays games automatically between people. Probably like this kind of thing where we will just like run games at midnight or something so that there's less people online. I'm not going to say no people online, because I've been on Discord that late at night and seen how many CSE students are up doing stuff. I'm the one gaming late at night anyway. So, but either way, you know, we have something that plays all the games against each other. And then the next day, everyone can wake up and look at the leaderboards and see how your program's doing. And you can look at replays of the games and say, like, oh, I won these games, I lost these games. And you can see whether your program's actually doing well or not. Or you can see the completely random stuff your program's doing. Abraham said comp 6841. Again, I don't know what that code is. Although 68 to me looks like it's one of the newer courses. Is that like penetration testing or securing systems or something like that? I'm not sure. Anyway, so that's the kind of the format is like we'll go for, let me say, 6 months if it was, but 6 months is like a long time, and each round is a month, which I think is also a long time. I think we're going to want to see results sooner than that. And then at the end of each round, we will see where the leaderboards end up at the end. And during the rounds, you'll get sort of daily updates so that you can go, oh, last night things went weird, I'll try again. And we might have stuff like default players to test against if you want to do like really, really fast iterations, that kind of thing. Right. 6841's just intro to security. I don't really know what would go on in the intro to security course, how deep you go into it there. All right. So, memes. Chicken, you've got to move. All right, chicken can come up here. I'll just shrink that down to the same size as the other one. There you go. So, what happens through these weeks? So during a round, we would have some kind of communication channel. Maybe we have a Discord or something like that. I do want this to be fairly open. People can talk to each other and stuff like that. And on this stream, I can give updates on what's going on. So like I can probably do like weekly updates on what's going on. I can talk about how people or teams are going. There's also the decision of whether we do people versus teams or we have two separate divisions. So if you have more than one person, you compete in a particular division. But if you've only got one person, you compete in a different division. I don't know. We'll see how we go. I mean, it also depends on how many people want to do this. Like, if it's like 20 or 30 of us doing it, I don't think there's enough space for two divisions. If it's like, 200 people, then yes, we would probably split it up so that people can work in teams if they want, or they can work alone if they want, and those are separate tournaments. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. And then during this time also, I would talk about what strategies might be useful, because I've set up each of the games in the round so that, every round has one game, and I've set it up so that there are ways to do this well or not. And so I might be able to like kind of dedicate one stream each round to how you would actually win this game. So how would you play this game? How would you think about it? How would you try to win it? And so we're talking game theory. We're talking AI algorithms. That's about it, actually. We're talking AI and game algorithms and stuff like that. And so we can think of throwing kind of generic AI algorithms and stuff, or we can think about throwing really specific decision-making algorithms for this particular game. I'll talk later about the types of games. Zach's thinking one division and up to N number of people. And I think that's fine. I think you get a lot of benefit from going from 1 to 2 people. But you get very little benefit from going from say 2 to 4 people. So like 1 to 2 people, you instantly get better because you have someone to bounce your ideas off. Once you get to 3 people, you have a communication issue, and once you get to 4 people, you just learn about merge conflicts and you never enter the tournament. I don't know if that's definitely the case, but I reckon it's going to be pretty close. So this was the meme. This is like carrying through all of this, where I'm thinking about the possibility of this maybe being something where you actually learn a whole lot of stuff out of it. And maybe I should make this into a course, but we'll see about that. So, I'll move Chicken back down here for a moment, although I think she'll have to move again. So, what happens at the end of each round? We look at the final standings, and then we're going to like pick apart the winner's code. Like this is like on this stream, I'll do a code review. So what I think is interesting about this is we want to see not necessarily what won, but what did well and why they did well. So we're looking at like who did something interesting, and why did it work. And so I think that might be a really cool thing to do, because what we're basically going to do is do an end of sprint code review on people's code, and we'll be looking at the ones that do well, or looking at the ones that do something interesting. So if we notice that a player is doing something, and it's like, because you can get this sometimes, a highly successful game player that has very little code in it, and it could have just been that the person unlocked a particular strategy that was, I don't know what I want to say, like particularly on meta. So they noticed that everyone was playing in a particular way, and what they did was, instead of winning the game itself, they won the game of how everyone else was playing the game. And so they particularly exploited other people or something like that. Like, that's something we might look at, and we'd look at their code, maybe get people on stream to talk about things and stuff, and go, okay, this is how this worked. And so we're looking at not just code review for usability, but also the tactics and why they worked and all not. And then some people will earn the glory of having their code be the basis of the next round. And we may give people multiple options, because I'm not just going to take the most high scoring person and make them the basis of the next one. I want the basis of the next one to actually be usable code, which is why we're doing stuff like code reviews. This isn't just a competition that you try to win. This is like it's something that I'm hoping will be, like, you know, highly educational at the same time. Dongju says merge conflicts 1531 in a nutshell. Hey, it's a skill. It's a skill, and it makes a lot of sense to learn how to deal with merge conflicts. Did I say conflux? Conflicts. I just went New Zealander for a second there. I had a talk that I haven't given for CSE, because it's really short and there's not really that much in it, but it's about code collaboration in a sense. And one of the analogies I use for a lot of this thing is, you've got a painting, right? But it's a single canvas. It's a big single canvas, and everyone has brushes and paint. So if you split things up well, and you've got sort of interfaces between people's sections, as in what color things should be when they reach the end of their section, things are going to work well. If two of you try to paint on the same space at the same time, it's going to turn into a mess. So your wet paint is going to hit the other person's wet paint, the colors are going to mix together, and it's all just going to go weird. So all the issues that you get in, say, merge conflicts and stuff like that, they're not problems themselves. They are evidence of a problem in communication in the team. And so the trick that's most important is to get your communication and your kind of structure of how you're working in the team working first. And then you figure out that, yes, you're using some form of source control to manage this situation, but the form of source control is the last thing you're thinking about. The first thing you need to do is get your team working together and communicating with each other effectively, because that's the only thing that's really going to make things work. Source control is just the thing that sort of glues it all together, and when it throws out errors, it's just telling you that there's a big problem somewhere else. What are people saying there? Does this mean people can put "was on Marc on Mondays" on their resume now? Well, that depends on how big and famous Marc on Mondays gets. We're sitting pretty regular now at just a regular group of people who are excited about this. So I don't think putting Marc on Mondays will be that great. However, if you say "I know Chicken the Cat," apparently a significant portion of staff at UNSW will know who you're talking about. It's pretty funny. Oh, Ford saying, you had to build your sister's bed. That's fun though. Building is fun. Is it a coding comp? Yeah, kind of. It's like you programming, will I call them agents? I don't know. Agents is a very weighted word in the AI world. I don't think they're agents, but they're game players. So you're coding game players. They're going to play these games against each other, and I'm going to show you which games they are. And what we want to do is do this in rounds and stuff. Hamish is saying, how restrictive would the language choice be? I don't know. So that's something I haven't decided at all. I think Well, this might be your problem. Can the infrastructure and the backend handle multiple languages? I think it probably can, because what we would do is we get everyone, like, if we're going to do with multiple languages, everyone would have to um, attach to a common interface, which I assume if it's going to be different languages, it'll just be a network port, right? You connect to a network port and then you will receive some text and you will deliver some text. And what we would do, I think, is write stub code for people in C, because what I want is like, someone to do 1511 and be able to roll straight into this if they want to. So if we're going to do networking, then what we would do is we would go, okay, here's the stub in C, or even better, here's starter code that actually takes information and does all the parsing in advance. So if the information that you need each turn of the game is a sequence of numbers, it reads them and stores them in the correct named variables, and then the person writing the code can just use those variables or something like that. Yeah, Zach's saying we're talking on the technical side and it's tricky. So yeah, and Zach's thinking standard in, standard out. So you know how like that works. That works already. CSE knows that works, and we've got infrastructure for it. That would be the easiest thing. Dongju says extra credit for MIPS. Just make things very hard on yourself. However, the deeper we go into this, the more we would get to the point of saying to people, you have 1 minute of oh no, you're saying like standard in, standard out, so that you can do any language of standard in, standard out. That's a good idea. Yeah. What was I gonna say? Yeah, we could get to the point where it's like you have 1 minute to process. So if you do not submit your move to the server within 1 minute of processing, we will submit a random move on your behalf, and then you will win or lose based on just playing randomly. Generally, playing randomly is going to make you lose. But it depends. It depends what other people's strategies are. Sometimes it throws a spanner in the works. But either way, people may end up getting to the point where they're doing sort of open-ended processing, or doing very, very difficult processing. Like, people want to start running like a min-max algorithm. I don't know if anyone knows about that. I don't know whether that's one of the algorithms they talk about in the algorithm subject or not. It's one that works okay for some games, but you're not going to get very deep in the rounds with just that algorithm. So that would be one of the earlier ones that I would talk about. And Hamish is thinking like a lot of things can interface directly with C, which would work. Yeah. Anyway, so that thing, I think that's a question of implementation, and we'll talk about that later. But I still want to talk a little bit more about structure. Anish is saying, sounds a lot like 2521's Dracula assignment. Yes. Someone did say that before, that Fury of Dracula, this reminds him of Fury of Dracula. And Ford saying, so it's each student's code against others in real time. Yeah. I don't know if we'd call it real time. But like, you submit your code, and then at appointed times, we take all the code that's been submitted and we run them all against each other. So probably just like most of the way through the round, it would be like a round robin where everyone plays everyone. And then we'd figure out some kind of scoring system. I assume that what we will end up doing is a chess style scoring system, like ELO rankings and stuff like that, so that if you beat someone who's beaten a whole lot of other people, then you move quickly up the rankings, because what we want is people's rankings to change quickly based on their most recent code, rather than them getting tied to what their win-loss rate was like 3 weeks ago at the start of the round, which is irrelevant. Like, you want to see how you were doing when you were with your most recent code, your best code. And I think ELO works quite well for that. It's like a ladder system, basically, where you play someone, and if they've beaten a lot of other people, you beat them, you get to get kind of pushed above them. And Abraham's like, Anish, didn't you win the 2521 assignment? Yeah. Hamish is saying they're all turn-based. I would expect that we're probably going to do turn-based stuff. I think once we get into real-time versus turn-taking games, the work that you need to do becomes much more difficult. So you'll have to have your own update loop doing, I don't know, 100 loops a second trying to make decisions on things, it becomes a lot of optimization fiddliness there. Whereas I think that we want to pitch this at a level that, if you haven't done that much coding, you can still have a crack, you can still have some fun doing it, rather than making the bar to entry so high that it's really hard to get involved. Okay, so this is what we might be doing round per round. So like every day this thing plays, we look at the leaderboards, and every week, maybe on this stream, we'll spend a few minutes talking about it and going, okay, so leaderboards have moved around a bit. So-and-so is now ahead of so-and-so, and if they're in the stream, they can say, ooh, I changed my algorithm, and this is why I'm ahead now, and stuff. And if people want to or not, they can talk about what tactics they're using. I don't really want this to be the kind of competition where people hide what they're doing in order to win. I think it's much cooler for us to be talking about what kind of things are working well, and especially when we stop in between the rounds to talk about things, everything really opens up, and people go, this is what I used. I found this thing on the internet, and I implemented it. Or I actually found a research paper on these style of games, and I implemented this thing, and it seemed to work. Not that I'm saying that you have to be able to implement research papers. That is a fairly advanced thing to have to do, because generally the way things are written in research papers does not give you a very useful guide on how to code it. They'll give a lot of detail on the analytics of how well it worked and the theory behind it, but not necessarily a step-by-step guide on how the algorithm works in practice. Anyway, so as I was saying, the next round, after a round finishes, we make the winner's code open source. I put the apostrophe after the S on winners because I could say there could be multiple winners, or there could be multiple interesting things that we might do. And every round then starts with a package that basically gets given to everyone who wants to play. So that means that each round is a level playing field. No one is taking anything from their previous round to the next round, except, I guess, the person that won the last time. If they want to, they can take the same code into the next round, and they might as well, because everyone else is also taking that same code in to the next round. But the cool thing about this is you can skip rounds. You can sit out entire, sections of the tournament, or you can just have not known about the tournament and you hear about it from someone else and you go, oh, I want to join, but it's round 3, and you're like, no worries. Here's the package that everyone got at the start of round 3. You now know what everyone else knows. Not exactly, but close. But the other thing that I want to do is to make sure that people don't just sort of sit on their laurels and use the same code over and over again. I will add new rules to the game every round. And these rules will be, I think this is the biggest thing for me in doing this, is making sure that this sequence of games that you play both has some relevance to the previous rounds, but also gives you something interesting to do in the next round. So it's got to be enough of a shake-up that you're not just going to, like, the previous code just won't win. It's enough of a shake-up the previous code can't win, but it's enough of a similarity that the previous code is still going to be useful somewhere. And hopefully whoever won last time has written it in a modular enough way that we can use it. And if they haven't, we will publicly shame them, because that's what we're doing. If you win and you get to gloat over everyone that you won the competition, you should know that your code will then be judged on its usability, because we've already judged it in a sense on its functionality. Afterwards, we're going to look at it and say, would we use this code? How do we use this code afterwards? Because it's not just a competition. There's judging going on. And what we want to do, and you understand the idea here, is like, I want to judge your code not just on its efficacy, but on its ability to be reused, maybe its modularity and stuff like that. So I think that's a good thing to do. So if people think they're pretty high in the rankings, they probably want their code to be quite modifiable. Also, honestly, if you want to win something like this, you need your code to be modifiable, because if you build a piece of shit in the first week and then you do well in the first week, I guarantee you will not do well in the second or third week, because you started early, but you kind of ran out of steam too early, and you write too much stuff that's not modifiable, and then you end up not being able to keep up as the meta shifts through the round. Stray saying, isn't giving the top performing code to everyone going to impact the struggling students' ability to move forward in future rounds? Yes, and I expect it to affect them in a positive way. I mean, like, if you're struggling, and yeah, I mean, it's tough, but I think it's the only way. Because if I don't give them anything, then they'll be further behind, you know? So what we want to do is level the playing field by saying that the next round, anyone who's ahead, everyone else gets to start from where they're up to. And yes, it does make a difference if that code isn't that usable. So that's why we're going to code review it. We're going to judge it. We may even rewrite the code before it goes back out in the package so that it's really useful. But I don't know. Depends on how much code I want to write. Maybe I'll make Zach do it. We'll see. J-Man says, we're fighting each other for the right to be publicly flogged. Exactly. And that's exactly what we should do in a competitive environment, you know? Cause like, you wanna get glory, so you try to win to get glory. But in reality, if we want to truly balance these things, then the person who wins should also be the person who's held to the highest standard. Because it's not really just about doing anything you can to win. And we're thinking about truly winning anything. It's about keeping the win, not just getting the win. You know, it's like the long-term versus short-term thinking. It's kind of like chess versus Go. So in chess, it's like, kill the king. The king's not really that strong on their own, so just kill the king. You've got to fight through a whole bunch of people to kill a king. And you go, that's all you need. Because in medieval Europe, if you can kill someone's king, you can take their country. Think how the fact that Britain's monarchy is a direct line of descendants from French people. Because William the Conqueror came across from France to England, killed King Harold, I think, at that point. I can't remember if it was Harold. There's lots of different names for people. And then took over the country, and since then never lost it. So Britain's technically French. And that's how you take the country. Whereas Go, which is a very medieval Asian game based, like, mostly, not exactly, but mostly Japan and China, where it was played the most. It's about capturing and holding territory. So they came under a different understanding that, like, to win a war, you must win the means to supply an army. And that's more important than the leader is the means to supply an army. So what you need to do is hold ground, but not just take the ground, but hold the ground under contention and things like that. So it's a very different thing. And so what I want for this is also that idea that winning isn't everything and winning is not enough. That's short-term thinking. We want a longer-term thinking where you don't just win, but you want to win and you want to set yourselves up for the future as well. Oh, and Shrey was saying the rewriting thing was what you're thinking about. So instead of just blanket throwing the code that someone's written to other people, we would use the ideas that that person had come up with and rewrite code in a very usable way and then give that out to everyone. So yeah. J-Man's like, Go is the superior board game. I think I definitely hinted at that myself when I was talking about that. Nicole's like, yes, Harold Saxon. Yeah. So it was that era, right? Hamish. So is the game eventually going to become a 4X strategy game, or will rules be removed each round as well? It's unlikely that rules are going to be removed. I have examples. I will tell you examples about one way I might do this. So it starts easy and then gets hard, but I'll talk about that in a second. J-Man was saying, is Go not ancient rather than medieval, considering it's 3,000 years old? Yes, I think you are correct. As a person who's not a historian, I will often not use the correct terms. So yes, chess is potentially ancient as well, or medieval. I think Go's older than chess, right? I don't actually know. Happy to be corrected on that, especially because I'm unlikely to use correct terminology and stuff. So Shrey was saying, TLDR, the best code, even if code reviewed, would likely to be very intimidating and scary to those who are struggling. So what we may be able to do again, depending on who's working in the back end, is the um, take the best code from the previous round, write that into a starter pack, and then release that along with a new rule set into the next round. So that might also be pretty good. Nicole saying Harold was the last Anglo-Saxon king, and J-Man was saying the other guy was also called Harold. So William was going to fight a Harold either way. Wait, there was another Harold somewhere? I don't know who the other person was. Anyway. Let's not get too deep into European history. Because I'm the only one with a voice here and I don't know enough about it to talk about it. So yeah. Each round, what we try to do is we level the playing field and give you new things to do, and then you go into another round. And so we keep doing that until we kind of reach a certain point. And that's either going to be a certain point of difficulty where I say, okay, it's hard enough now. I don't think that we can go any further than this. Or we reach a point where we exhaust the interest in it and we finish, and then we decide when we're going to start it again. This is definitely not something that I think that we're going to want to run like every term or anything like that. I think this might be a once a year thing, and I think that the best time for it is likely to be around the start of term 2. So I think that term 1 being the Comp 1511 reserved for computing majors term, although a significant part of term 2 Comp 1511 is also reserved for computing majors. But because term 1 is, that's like the end of that is a decent time to put something like this. So it might be a term 2 thing every year, but also depends. Like, I don't really have any plans for longevity for this thing yet. I just want to do this one off and see what we learn from it. The most interesting thing we might get out of this is me hitting a point with this and saying, this is a legitimate university course. And then the next time it runs, you get course credit for it. So I think that could be really cool. I had ideas about how to do assessment for this kind of thing and stuff like that. So we see how it goes. J-Man Googled. Chess is about 1400 years old. Go is about 4000 years old. So Go is significantly older than chess. So Nicole's saying 15th century, but there were primitive versions of chess before that. And Peter's saying precursors to chess was maybe 7th century. I think this is interesting stuff, you know, because if I ever want to teach people about how to play games, it could be really interesting to talk about what are the oldest games? When were people actually doing this level of kind of abstract design for both entertainment and training for war and stuff like that? Yeah. And Hamish is saying to get the new 1511 students interested should be plugged during term 1. And yeah, you know, considering I take 1511 in term 1, it's going to be pretty easy for me to plug something like this. Okay, so we've looked at what a round is, what happens during the round, and what happens at the end of the round that turns it around to the next round. So I thought I would show an example game. And I'll show you the game of 15. So this is a game that Abraham's asked me if I've watched the Queen's Gambit. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's interesting, and I heard a lot of people liked it, but I just haven't watched it. But chess is fun. I mean, I've never been any good at it. I think that I lack the patience for a game like chess. I think when my friends were playing chess, I was playing Doom. It's like, Mark, you're too violent for that game. I have a feeling it sneaks into the way I play as well. It's like, Mark, you didn't need to like trade that piece. And it's like, yeah, but I wanted blood. So, this is a side here when I'm talking about this game. I could have actually just showed you an example of a game, but here I wanted to show you this because it's a fun way of thinking about things. And this is the kind of thing that we teach a lot of the time when we're thinking about computers playing games and stuff like that. So this is the game of 15. We have the numbers 1 through to 9, And in turn, people pick a number. So if one person's picked a number, the other person can't have that number. So everyone gets a number each in turn. And whoever can get exactly three of their numbers to add up to 15, wins the game. So if you get it, you get it. If you can see this, then either you've heard of this before, or you have a very good connect between abstract reasoning and memory of other things. So I'll show you an example of kind of how this game is working. So I've got this order of things. So first, red picks 5, so they get the number 5, because they thought that adding up to 15, maybe the one in the middle is a good idea to have. And then blue picks 7. Who knows why? they were aiming at something or something. Then red picks 1. Blue picks 2, so red has 5 and a 1, so they add up 6. Blue has a 7 and a 2, they add up to 9, which means that red, they then pick 9, and then get 9 and 1 and 5, they get 15, and they win. Blue would have 7 and 2 is 9, which means they were aiming at 6, but red got there first. So this is a he's behind you moment for anyone who's done Comp 1511 and heard me say that. If you know what this is, don't say it yet, because it's an interesting thing. And I like thinking about the idea of trying to pick up strategy and understanding through your perception of what a game is. So actually, let's go to chat for this. We've got 30 people here. That's enough. Or 29. No, 30 people now. It just went to 30 as I said that. We also check what my latency is at this point, because I think I didn't put this on ultra low latency today. Put a 1 in chat if you know what this game is, and put a 2 in chat if you don't know what this game is, but you reckon you could potentially play this. Nicole, that is interesting. That Kasparov, who was the best chess player to lose to Deep Blue, is now an advocate for AI and tech. And I think Lee Sedol is similarly like that, the Go grandmaster who lost to AlphaGo. Hi Waleed, how's it going? Okay, I'm waiting for the numbers. A 1 if you know what this game is, and a 2 if you don't, but you reckon you could still play it. So there are Peter's figured out what the game is, and other people are like, yeah, I could pretty easily play this if you wanted to, because you can just see, right? It's basic addition. We could just play this. This used to be, I think this used to be. Oh, it's Paula. Hello. Is that the Paula who I know, who I've met? I assume it is. Yeah, and Alex is saying 1 for seen, 2 for haven't seen, but could figure it out. So we're getting mostly 2s, some people 1s. Either they've seen this before, or they have an interesting link between their numeric and spatial reasoning. So I'm getting enough answers here to get the understanding that people are like, don't know what this game is. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say to everyone who said 2 for this game, I'm going to say to you that you do know what this game is. But I've intentionally represented it in a way that makes it difficult to understand. So let me go to the next slide. So this is how I know that they're no longer showing this game in the AI course, because they used to show it in what's the AI course? 3411? Is that the artificial intelligence introduction? Because I know that they used to show this example about how human perception is intelligent in certain ways and machine perception is intelligent in other ways. It is Paula. Hello. You can tell what my delay is with the chat at the moment because of that. Okay. Also, Peter recognizes it. Do you recognize it from the AI course, Peter? Is that just because most people haven't done that course necessarily? I don't know if I should wait. I don't know what my delay is, whether it's like 30 seconds or something like that. Okay. So, let's go to the next slide so I can show you what this game is. Does it look more familiar if I put this in a grid and I make every straight line, vertical, horizontal, and diagonal on this grid, if I make every straight line in this add up to 15, Anish just sort of figured it out. I think Anish just had a moment with it there. And Peter said, you saw a computer file. Yeah, yeah. And Dongju's like, wait, I think I remember this. Yeah. So these are the same numbers that the two players picked. Hamish. Yep. Dongju's like, yep. Representation of another game. Yeah, and then you got it. You got it. Yeah. So now we know what this game is. It's just tic-tac-toe. So what was it? Picking 5 first was reasonably intelligent because it was the one in the middle, and it turns out it's the one in the middle if you think about it spatially as well. And then the 1 and the 9 was just one of the arcs. But the blue player, and when this was a course, we used to take volunteers to play the game, and you'd see people lose tic-tac-toe. And they would lose it in really obvious ways because they didn't think about blocking the other person because it wasn't as obvious spatially whether they were blocking the other person or not. So, and Hamish is like, just figured it out just beforehand. Yeah, Nicole's like, that was hard, not gonna lie. Yeah, yeah. So most people don't get it. Most people don't realize, and it's a really, really interesting thing because it's a measure of whether we can transform in our head one problem into another. I don't know if people have heard much about NP completeness, NP hard, NP complete. Those problems that exist in the world that kind of need so much computing power to finish that they become intractable. They become things that we'll never really be able to solve in any feasible way. And it turns out that the entire class of problems are all the same problem. It's really weird, but I think trying to think of the ones that are commonly thought of as the NP hard problems, like the knapsack 01 problem, or the traveling salesman, or the 3-color problem. Is the 3-color problem even NP complete? I can't even remember. Like, there's a whole series of these really famous sort of mathematical computational problems. Like, I say mathematical computational because both mathematicians and computing people come together on these to try to solve them. Computing people want an efficient algorithm to solve them because we're looking at real world time of solving these things. Mathematicians are looking more at the algorithms, but they still get into like complexity as well. And it's funny because all you need to do is twist the way you look at them around and they can all be solved with one solution. The only problem is we have not got that solution. So it's one of those things where if anyone figures out how to do that or can prove the genuine capability to solve or not solve those, has got like a Nobel Prize waiting for them. But the chances of any of us actually figuring it out is pretty low because so many people have thrown copious amounts of mental effort at these and they haven't cracked in any way. So it's the kind of thing where we're just unsure about whether they're just beyond, like they're actually theoretically beyond solving or something. But I don't know. It is a very interesting kind of world, I guess, to explore. And this was just an aside. This had nothing to do with the competition. I just wanted to show you this because it's kind of fun. Waleed's catching up on the stream and saying, yes, we make programs to play progressively harder game to make the ultimate soul crusher. Yeah. Waleed's asking how many people I reckon will use some kind of genetic algorithm to AI this. Well, I'm hoping that happens. Like, if you get to the final round without implementing some kind of AI algorithm, then I have failed. Because if I let you get to the end with a series of if-else statements, well, technically, if you get to the end with a series of if-else statements, you have implemented a decision tree, which is an AI algorithm. But, yeah, I think that it does make sense to do some kind of AI for this. But what it's going to be is I'm going to show these things as we go along. So I'm going to talk about different AI algorithms and what I think might be decent to target this. But what I think will be more interesting than me telling you what to do is figuring out what people do when they experiment. You know, they experiment with different things. They don't necessarily take what I'm doing, or they take the algorithm that specifically beats the one that I told everyone to use. So they play the meta. And I think that's what's interesting about a competition is we want to encourage creative problem solving. It's very different from something like, I would say, like an assignment at uni, where it's like, yeah, there's a certain amount of creative problem solving. There's creative problem solving in all programming, but if the outcome's meant to be the same for everyone, it's pretty easy to just kind of go cookie cutter on it and go, this is exactly what we do, and we just do what we do. Whereas when you're trying to find an imaginative way to beat other people, maybe thinking about it in interesting things is good. I think, like, and especially in terms of like genetic algorithms, like you can just, like, if you wanted to, I could spend one of these streams teaching you how to make genetic algorithms, and you'll be implementing them by the end of the stream. They're not that hard. The fundamental theory of them is very simple. But getting them to work well is something different. And also, that's why it's interesting to do these games where we play against each other, because genetic algorithms are things that I think are fairly decent planning algorithms. So you can plan very well in a world that doesn't change. But once it becomes a dynamic environment where someone else is trying to beat you the whole time, the genetic algorithms are less useful, I find. Because they're kind of counting on being able to map a genome for the entire solution in one go. And you can't make an entire solution because you can't tell the other player what to play. So other algorithms might work better. Neural nets might be decent. I don't know. We'll see. There's certain games neural nets work really well at. Anyway, let's get back to the format of the competition we're talking about. The discussion of how to win the competition will happen during the competition, and we'll have actual examples to think about. But anyway, tic-tac-toe might be a good first round, because it's pretty easy to win. So we're not really going to get a good spread of win-loss ratios and stuff like that, because if you want to, you can literally memorize as a human with like shitty meat brain memory. You can memorize how to win tic-tac-toe. Like, if you go second, you have to stalemate it. If you go first, you have to push it so that any mistake will allow you to win, and that's it. That's all you have to do. So as a first round, it would be good, because all it would do is would get people into the idea of how to play a turn-based game, how to implement it, how to read the inputs and outputs and stuff like that. I hazard a guess that it would be too easy for a first round, because it wouldn't differentiate people. What we would get by the end of, like, if we did this for 3 weeks playing tic-tac-toe, what we would get at the end is everyone's drawing all the time. And if we get that, yeah, that's okay. But I think that it would be a little bit too easy, because it's just like such a low complexity game. Like, you will play a maximum of 5 times during the game. And so when we think about branching possible futures, tic-tac-toe does not branch very much. So you have, the first person has 9 options, and then the next time they play, they have 7 options. The next time they play, they have 5 options, and it narrows, which means it's not like, it's only kind of an exponential growth in it. And it runs out of moves for you to do. So you could potentially write a series of if-else statements for every single possible board state. It would be a really, really boring piece of code to write. You could definitely do it smarter, but I don't think that this would be enough for a first round, unless I wanted a first round that just gave everyone a chance to dip their toes. But the competition literally doesn't start this round. Like, there's no point having leaderboards in the first round if it's tic-tac-toe. I think well, it's like genetic algos is just the comp sci equivalent of tweaking knobs till it works somehow. I don't know if it's even that. I think genetic algorithms, you don't even tweak the knobs. You just gonna throw this thing in. And if I can spin up enough CPUs, this thing will come up with a decent solution. It's kind of like genetic algorithms are as smart as their population is diverse. Just like genetics in real life. Oh, Abrams, and Chicken is getting up. I think she's cleaning her paws. Um, and Peter's saying maybe make it a code golfing challenge warm up. Yeah, we can do stuff like that. However, if something like Tic-Tac-Toe was the beginning, then I have modifications on Tic-Tac-Toe, which would be quite viable to be the next few rounds. So the trick is, a lot of the code that you write for the beginning of Tic-Tac-Toe becomes very useful in the future if I make it more complex. So Hamish is, yep, Hamish has picked where I'm going next, which is interesting. Nineboard Tic-Tac-Toe is one of my examples in this. And Abraham's like 5-dimensional chess with multiverse time travel. So adding multiple dimensions to this would be possible. So do 3-dimensional tic-tac-toe or something like that. Or just making the grid really big so that your ability to calculate it is much harder. But anyway, and Waleed saying Code Bullet is an interesting intro to generic algorithms and neural networks. I've not seen Code Bullet. Anyway, okay, so Tic-Tac-Toe, if Tic-Tac-Toe was the base, which obviously is not going to be because I've already revealed it. I revealed it because I don't want to use it, but I'll show you the methodology for what we might do. So an example for a later round, let me just move myself and chicken out of the way of the text. So yeah, if we start with Tic-Tac-Toe, which I was already thinking this when I was writing the slides, like admittedly a bit too easy. What extra rules could we add to the game? So there's things that you could do. A simple addition to Tic-Tac-Toe that makes it very hard is just to make the boards bigger, which means you've got more possibilities. It's harder to calculate. You can't just do if-else statements all the way through to the end of the game. One game that follows on from Tic-Tac-Toe in an interesting way, which is kind of, I wouldn't say proven, but I would say it's very, very obvious that humans cannot fully dominate the game, is if we just go from Tic-Tac-Toe to Connect 4. If anyone's played Connect 4, you've got a grid, and it's usually minimum 8x8. It might be even bigger than that. Or it's like 6x8 or something. I don't know exactly how big it is. And people drop their color token into it. So you've actually got a limited number of places. You don't have the whole board you can play on. You can only just drop. And so you end up in the lowest place in each one. And you need to make a 4 in a row. Horizontal, vertical, diagonal. In the same way as Tic-Tac-Toe, only you don't span the entire board with it. You're just in some particular place. And while there may be some people in the world who can play Tic-Tac-Toe 100%, oh sorry, not Tic-Tac-Toe, play Connect 4 100% optimally, my experience is that with a trivial amount of time and thinking, a human can solve Tic-Tac-Toe 100%. But it is definitely not a small and trivial amount of thinking to completely solve Connect 4. And I've noticed this, like, you know, making AIs to play games, that it's much easier to make an AI that completely stomps you in Connect 4 than it is in Tic-Tac-Toe, because humans can still keep up in Tic-Tac-Toe, but in Connect 4 humans can't keep up even with rudimentary AI. So that might be a good thing. It's like just getting to bigger boards. Multiplayer asymmetrical rules, I love these. I think they're interesting. I think that you could treat it as an inevitability that I will make you play in teams at some point in this competition. And I don't mean a team working on one piece of code. I mean you will actually be paired up with other players and have to somehow make this work. Asymmetric multiplayer, I think, is always super interesting. I actually have slides on that. What were people talking about there? Waleed was asking, will we still be doing solved games near the end too, or will we move to unsolved games? And Hamish was saying we couldn't learn the rules in 3 weeks, let alone write a bot. I mean, we could get to certain games, but we are not getting to chess. You know, like when we think about how hard it is to make a chess player, I think that that's a little bit excessive. I think, again, this is on me. The design of the competition must be ramping up at a steady pace, and a pace that people can handle. Hamish said 6x7, so Connect 4 is a 6x7 grid, and that's not that much bigger. than tic-tac-toe. And 6x7 means that the number of options you have each turn are a little bit less, well, sometimes less, sometimes more than tic-tac-toe, which means it's not really, like, you know, on the surface, not distinctly harder than tic-tac-toe, but then when you come down to trying to think about it, it really is. Um, um, Abraham was like, make the slide background green and then green screen chicken in as the background. Maybe I just need to change the blanket on that chair to green, and then we'll green screen chicken in, and then we can put her sitting on the words and stuff like that. Um, Peter's like, make a 4x bot. I mean, we could build up a game that has some kind of 4x tendencies, but I still think that's very difficult. Because like what you want to do is just be able to tell really easily whether you win or not. Whereas Civilization games is like, there's too many different ways to win. It's too hard to judge the current state of the game to decide what you're going to do. J-Man's like, literally any phone AI will destroy Deep Blue. I mean, I think we're at that point, right? When was Deep Blue was 80? I don't know why I want to say 1988. I don't know if that's the actual year, and we're well beyond that now, right? Like we're just the raw computation capabilities that we have are well beyond that. Yeah, so basically what we're going to do as we go through the rounds is we're going to change the game in such a way that you can still use the things that you knew about previously, but they're not enough, right? So that's the balance that I want, is the stuff that you've written previously is still of use, or the stuff you've thought about how to win is still of use, but things increase in complexity in some way to make it more interesting. So I've got a couple of ideas here. Just making it bigger, because this is just computational complexity, literally the amount of processing time it takes to do something. So if you had a generic solution, this generic solution would then start to run a lot slower if there were more options per turn. The multiplayer stuff is then you can't plan for the future as well as you thought you could, because you could plan assuming that your teammate is going to play optimally, and that is an assumption you cannot make, right? Because they're going to plan for themselves, and they may do something completely different to you, especially the asymmetric. I'll talk about that in a second. But a more complex game based on the same basic rules will definitely work. I'll talk about one of those as well. But basically, yeah, every time I add something to the game, we start thinking differently. We have to redo our planning, and compete again, in a sense. And so it's not just the meta of who's winning and the techniques they're using to win, but the rules are going to change each round. So another thing that we could do is team tic-tac-toe. So 4 players together in a game, and probably a bigger board, because 4 players on a 3x3 is not going to be enough space for everyone to really play. But what we can do with this bigger board is like player 1 uses player 2's symbols on the board, and they can make a line using theirs and player 2's symbols. Player 2 can use their own symbols and player 3's symbols. Player 3 uses 3s and 4s, and player 4 uses player 4 and 1. So you're in a team with someone else, but that person's trying to beat you, right? So you then have to strategize around who you're going to give the win and who you're going to take it from. And it becomes really weird and difficult, because you're not actually teaming up with anyone. You're using someone else's stuff, but that person who you're using is trying to win for themselves and not for you. So they're trying to win with someone else instead. And I don't know how many rounds we'd have to go through before something like this got added in. Because as you can see, just thinking about this, and you think about tic-tac-toe, you go, oh yeah, I can figure out how to win tic-tac-toe. That's no big deal. But this game suddenly is completely different. But we could still use a lot of the code base, right? We don't have to write new code for checking who's winning. We don't have to write new code to check whether someone is one move away from winning and we need to block them or anything like that. We can use that code from the previous time, and now we think about how do we deal with the asymmetry of win-loss? What if when I win, someone else also wins? Or what if if I play to stop someone else winning, then the other team wins instead, you know. And so you have a lot of fiddliness going on here. And this is an example of like how we would do this. How we might strategize, might have to strategize very differently from one round to the next. So that's one option. I do really like this option. This kind of thing is probably going to come into it, where it's like there's no safety. Like, it's like super chaotic whenever you play a game that's like this. The other one, and I think it was Hamish that brought this up. You knew where I was going with this. You could see the potential game. This is a thing called Nineboard Tic-Tac-Toe. And I used to play this a bit. I used to play this with my students a bit. It was a lot of fun. Where what you have is 9 separate tic-tac-toe boards. But each board is in the place of like a square of 9, like tic-tac-toe. And what you do is whenever you play in a position on one of those boards, that tells your opponent which board they're going to play on next. I have diagrams on this. So I drew up some stuff earlier. So let's say at the start of the game you can actually play anywhere you want. So at the start of the game, the X player played in the top left corner. Ooh, hang on. There's not going to be enough space for myself and myself and Chicken to be visible here, but we'll see how we go. So if I play it on the top left, then the O player, so the X player played in the top left, the O player will then play on the top left board. They don't have to play in the top left corner of the board. They can play anywhere they want in that board. But because the previous player played in the top left, they sent them to this board. So the next thing after that is this player plays in the bottom right corner. And because they played in the bottom right corner, the X player is then sent to the bottom right board to play. The X player... Oh, Chicken's in the way. The X player then plays in the top right corner, which means the O player will then play in the top right board. And it keeps going like this, and you move people around to different things. And it's super, super interesting because you end up with these boards not being tic-tac-toe boards. Because you might have a situation where one player gets to play like more than one move in a row on a board. And so as this game builds up, you end up in a situation where, like, say the O player plays another O here, and so the next time they get sent to this board, they will definitely win because they've got 2 in a row, which means that the top left corner position on all of the boards becomes kind of unusable for the X player. So it's an interesting game because you have to think not just about how you might win tic-tac-toe, but if you're trying to win one board, and especially if you have a simple win condition. So I think Hamish was talking about a difficult win condition where you have to win 3 boards in a row. The simple win condition is you just have to win 1 board and the game ends. And I like it that way because what it means is you have significant risk. Like, you can't just you can't throw a board in order to win another board. You literally have to win, like, or you have to draw all the boards to stop the other person from beating you, that kind of thing. So it's quicker and deadlier, I think, if you can win with only 1. So the way this works is similar to what I was saying about Connect 4. In practice, it's a little bit more effort for a human to think about these things. So when we're making programs to play games, there's always different approaches we might take to it. So one of the approaches is, I as a human know how to play said game. I will program my intelligence into the computer. So the computer will have a copy of my ideas. I've done that before for other games, like and those are the ones that are if-else statements. Like, if you find yourself in this situation, this is the best outcome. So for example, simple things to think about. I don't know if anyone's ever played Blackjack. Here, Blackjack is a game of cards, and in Blackjack, you use the numbers on the cards, and any face card, like the Jack, Queen, or King, is worth 10, and the Ace has a special case of being worth either 1 or 11, and you can choose either number as you're playing. And you want to get as close to 21 as you can without going over. And it's very easy to go over 21 because of the number of 10 cards there are. So there are a set of really basic rules you can just use all the time for blackjack, and they will roughly work for you. Like there are tricks you can do with it where you can split your hand into two decks, and this joke that people have is like you always split aces and 11s. Because if you've got not aces and 11s, it's the same card, 8s and 11s. Because if you've got two 8s, they add up to 16. 16 is not a strong hand. You're reasonably far from 21, but if you take another card, you're statistically very likely to go over 21, and then lose the entire game. So 16 is a really bad number to have. But 8 is a decent number to have, because if you get a 10 and an 8, 18 is a decent number to stop on and stop taking more cards. So if you have two 8s, you're always better off splitting it into two hands, which if you do this at the casino, you pay extra, so that each of the two 8s becomes its own hand and gets an extra card. So there's little things like that you just go just purely based on rules. I don't know if anyone remembers Coco. Was anyone here in 2019 T1? I know I recognize at least one name of a person who was definitely here in 2019 T1. That's Zach. Were you? Actually, Zach, were you T1 or T2? I can't remember. But yeah, there were people who would have played that. Coco was a game that was a numerical game based roughly on Hearts 500 trick-taking style games that we played in Comp 1511 as the first assignment. We were ranking people based on their competitive scores, which in the end is why I didn't use it again. Because I wanted people to be not ranked, but assessed based on their ability to code, not necessarily their ability to strategize. Whereas in this situation, obviously, we're going to be ranking people on their ability to strategize. And the code is there to support how you strategize, but it's not necessarily going to be the be-all and end-all. Like, you can write really good code with the wrong strategy, and you're still not really going to get anywhere. So the funny thing about Coco is I know how to play Hearts and 500 and stuff like that. So what I did was I just put in some really, really simple strategies in, I think it was like 4 if statements. And when I submitted it, it was early on. Not that many people had like entered the competition yet, but I just went straight to the top of the leaderboard. So that was just like prior experience with the game allowed me to just auto win from the beginning. I didn't stay there. I also didn't want to develop it further because I thought it would be mean. And so that's one way of doing artificial intelligence, where it's like a simulation of human intelligence. And the other way that you might do it is say, no, I'm just going to get the machine to think for themselves. So I'm going to leverage the fact that the machine has billions and billions of numbers worth of memory. And so what we can do is we can memorize all possible outcomes of this game. So what we do is we play literally all possibilities of tic-tac-toe from the start to the finish. And then given that we know which paths lead to wins and which paths lead to losses, we take the plays that only lead us towards paths where we win. And then what we do is we have this tree of futures where we start from our current position and we go all these possible futures and we just pick the ones that lead to more positive outcomes. I would talk a little bit about that because that's like what we call the min-max algorithm. It grows out of game theory and things like Nash equilibria and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting. And min-max it's nearly foolproof because what it does is you play assuming that your opponent plays optimally, and if at any point they don't play optimally, it automatically takes advantage of it. And otherwise, you will basically minimize your opponent's maximum score, or maximize your minimum score. Yeah, also maximize your minimum score. That's why it's funny that it's called min-max, because it actually works both ways. Yeah. Zach's like, I still have Coco integer factorization cards on my desk. And Oscar says, I remember Zach trying to teach me Coco. Yeah, so the downside... Oh, Zach said you have physical Coco cards. Let's have a look. Yeah. They were all numbered, and then you're talking about 5 squared, 3 times 5, 2 times 17. It was like basically, you know, like the way I did the tic-tac-toe thing, it was a similar thing. So instead of suits, they were multiples of different numbers were suits. So you could beat something with a higher thing that had the same multiples as it and stuff. So it was a bit fiddly. Hamish is asking if Coco is a real world game or made up. For 1511, it was made up. So it's basically hearts with numbers instead of suits. There was even the Black Queen that's in hearts, which if you end up with the Black Queen, you lose, and that was the number 42. And I think that was because 42 had factors in common with every single other card in the deck. Like there was no card in the deck that didn't factorize with it. So it's like it's the card that you could use to win any trick, except if you do, you end up with it at the end, and so you lose the game. And one of the things I did to in a way ensure my my player was going to win was just turf the 42. Like if you have it at the beginning, pass it on. If you get it at any point, give it away. Could we give away? I can't remember whether we were trading cards or not. But yeah, it started winning more because like I realized that like the card that is poison, you should not carry. You should make someone else have to play it rather than yourself, and don't leave yourself in a situation where you have to choose whether or not to play it. Especially because you can't really trust your computer program like to always have to deal with that card separately. So you just go, I'm going to make the rest of my code simpler by trying to make sure I just don't have it. And then I just started winning a really high percentage of games because of that starting point, and then just basically playing in a decent way otherwise. Anish said Doctor Strange performing min-max during Endgame. Yeah, but like it was so funny because Doctor Strange was like, I've looked at a million different outcomes. And I'm just like, a million? Seriously? Is that all? like a basic gameplay computer is going to look at like several billion minimum before like before even hazarding a bad guess at something. And also we need to think about, okay, the way that the things are going to happen when you try to play games is once we give you a game of sufficient complexity. Chess is a funny one, right? Because when they talk about chess, the average chess game, I think competition game lasts for, what was it, like 35 turns? Approximately? Really approximately. And the branching factor of chess, like how many possible moves you can make on any turn, is about 20. I'm really spitballing these numbers because it doesn't matter about these numbers. Because let's go Wolfram Alpha. I love Wolfram Alpha. So if the branching factor is 20 and it's roughly 35 moves, then the branching factor of the game, how many possibilities we could get, is roughly 35 to the power of 20. Here, 10 to the power of 30. And it's this number with all the stuff. This is one move, by the way. This isn't the entire tree. This is just one node of the tree at the very end. It's 35 to the power of 20. And I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure that number is large enough that we can't store it on any of the computers that currently exist. And it gets worse if you do other games as well. So even nowadays, even the computers that are beating Deep Blue and stuff like that, they're not actually looking at all possible futures. They can't. Did I do it the wrong way around? 20 to the power of 35? Oh yeah, 35 turns. Each step, it goes up a power. That number did look a bit low to me. This one will be bigger. Yes. There you go. Either way, doesn't mean that much difference, because either way, these numbers are in the realm of uncomputability. Yeah, I'm glad people... I love it. Me freestyling my basic maths. I find it deeply ironic that I am, like... You know, when it comes to it, worldwide, people who have worked on game playing AI, I'm in like, the elite, people who have actually genuinely researched it and all this kind of stuff. And I take like the simplest concept and I still get it wrong. There's one thing that I've taught you all is that making mistakes is fine, especially if I make them. Oh, look. Comparison, roughly equivalent to number of chess positions. So the real numbers, 5.2 times 10 to the 49. So at least it knew that I was in the same order of magnitude. I was actually much, much smaller than the order of magnitude in a sense. Like I was potentially, like that looks like maybe potentially one order of magnitude lower than the number of chess positions. But I love that that is the comparison. So yeah, anyway, number of chess positions. Oh, this is the total number of chess positions, not the average number of moves you have to analyze to reach the end of normal games. So this is the end of normal games, assuming that people are actually trying to win. If no one's trying to win, that number gets much, much higher, because there's plenty of positions that people generally won't take. Anyway, what we end up having to do there is we're having to make algorithms that will be able to see that kind of possible number of futures spanning out in front of them and say, I'm not going to look at all of them. I cannot look at all of them, but I will still come up with a strategy to play this game. And that I think personally is the core of what game playing AI needs to do. It's always about dealing with uncountable numbers. What are people saying in chat? Yeah, Hamish was laughing at the comparison. Assignment 1 is the top result when searching Coco card game. Yeah, that makes sense. Everything in Comp 1511 has so many people doing it that like you can generally get Google hits. That's weird, because isn't there a Disney movie called Coco? That should be like way ahead. All right, if you just search for Coco, then you get the Disney movie. Is it Disney? It is Disney, yeah. Anyway, what have we got here? Comp 1511 AI, deep irony. we should give all of our players really specific names like that. I think it'd be really funny. Oscar's saying modern min-maxing engines like Stockfish can look around 20 moves ahead. 20 moves is a long way. I'm very impressed with that. Sulux is saying 35 minutes behind. The whole story of how IBM screwed over Kasparov and the Deep Blue thing is quite interesting. Yeah, that is cool. No, we didn't actually talk about that. Was it? It was Kasparov, I think. Where the program crashed partway through one of the games. And it played something weird and silly. So it played something that it didn't think was a good move. It just had to throw a move out, and so it just did. And Kasparov was kind of thrown by this. I think this is I'm relating the story. I don't know the story like perfectly. I'm just relating the story. Kasparov got thrown by it because he was like, "Why is it doing that? I can see what's good. I know what I think it should play," and it played something else. Him and a bunch of his chess analysts looked at this after the game, I think, for the next kind of few weeks and stuff, and then they had a really good look at it, and then what they thought was, and I don't know whether they could fully confirm this, but what they thought was that that move was better than what Kasparov thought that Deep Blue should play, and it was better in the order of looking ahead like 30-40 moves or something. It was a very, very long way ahead. And then he came to the unfortunately incorrect realization that he thought that the computer was then way, way smarter than him, and it changed the way he played against it. Like, it all just kind of like it shook him to the core, because he didn't think that he thought that he was like close on par with the computer. He didn't think that the computer was that far ahead of him, and then he started to think that Deep Blue was that far ahead of him, and it really kind of it changed the way he played, and it changed what he was trying to do. And so the idea is that maybe he got beaten a little bit by the psychology of second guessing himself based on what the computer did. So I think that's the story that Sulux is asking about, except Sulux is not going to get up to the point of me talking about this story for another half hour. So you'll have to confirm later whether I got that story correct or not. Oh no, it was like they took info away from him. Interesting. Interesting. Oh, and Oscar's correcting my maths as well when I said 35 moves. It's 35 moves from both players, so it's more like 70. So if I put this up to 70, you'll see if the comparison is still the same. I don't know, going up to 70 is going to be more... No, we're getting up to atoms in the visible universe. So I think... Yeah, I don't know. Somewhere my numbers aren't entirely correct, but it doesn't matter. Either way, the computational capability of this is like not really doable. Not really doable by us, not really doable by our computers. But the funny thing is, against that level of difficulty of complexity, humans can still play. Like, we can still understand enough of the rules to play. We don't play that well, but we play well enough, you know? And so if we want to make a computer that approaches human capability in certain specific problems. Like, we really only have been able to do the problems that are already abstracted to some kind of mathematical construct, and then computers are pretty good with those. Everything else is a little bit more difficult. Although we've got like artistic styles and stuff like that, but honestly, art can be reduced to a mathematical construct because of RGB colors in a two-dimensional array, you know. It sort of is reduced to a mathematical construct. It's not entirely. It's got its own, you know. Can you evoke emotion through just the changing of numbers? I mean, technically yes, but at the same time, it's hard to say. Like, you know, it's like computers can mimic art styles, but they're still relying on training on human data. When we get to the point where the computers are creating art without experience of human art, and it's not like we can mimic it, but we create something of our own, I think that would be really cool and interesting. Because I think we're already getting that with artificial intelligence. Where, as I was saying before, a simulation of human capability is like one form of AI. But if we go to a completely different form of AI and we say the machine thinks the way it wants to think, when it thinks the way it wants to think, it produces results that it wants to produce, you know? And heaps of AI algorithms are doing that. I find it deeply ironic that the most famous nowadays AI algorithm, which is like your deep learning neural network, is based off human brains. So it's like, damn it, we spent all this time and effort to try to find the machine's way of thinking, you know, to try to help the machine think for itself. And in the end, all it did was to get it to simulate our own brains. And at the moment, that is the premier AI algorithm. But, you know, the movement is potentially running out of steam in the near future. Don't know. Hard to tell. As if I could predict that. But I have a feeling that we're going to reach the end. Like, well, every algorithm reaches a sort of a natural endpoint where it's like, we have plumbed the depths of what this thing can do. We have written 18,000 research papers on all of the different input numbers you can put into a deep learning neural network and all the different problems we can aim this at. And everything from then on is just sort of engineering optimization, make them move a bit faster, make them learn a bit faster, that kind of thing. And we won't really be making leaps and strides by that point. But yeah, hopefully at some point we will develop machine intelligence in a way that fits the machine rather than forcing the machine to think like us. Because when you think about neural nets, it's all about kind of weirdly connected, arbitrarily connected nodes doing floating point arithmetic, which is not really what a computer's best at. The computer's best at like contiguous memory operations and integer arithmetic, even better binary arithmetic. And if we could allow that to be the basis of an AI, then maybe we'd actually get the true sort of artificial intelligence rather than the copy of human intelligence. Not just human. Neurons are not neurons and synapses and stuff are not just us. we happen to be the ones that have used it most effectively. But pretty much all the creatures on Earth have got the same kind of brain setup. Okay. What are we talking about? J-Man's like Lysadol versus AlphaGo was a lot more fair and epic. Yeah. I love the AlphaGo documentary. I think if anyone's done 1511, I've suggested that people should watch it. It's on YouTube now. So it used to be on Netflix, and now it's completely free. Michael, this is still going on. Yes. Actually, today we haven't gone overtime yet. Because I will usually I like schedule like a 2-hour thing. So we haven't gone overtime. I haven't gone through all the slides yet though, but like as if I ever get through all the slides in one go. So yeah, the different games that we could scale up the difficulty. I have a feeling that Nineboard Tic-Tac-Toe would be a pretty late round, because I don't think that you're playing Nineboard that well unless you're looking a little bit ahead in time. Actually, you could wind back. You could play Nineboard super defensively and still be able to play. So all you would do with Nineboard Tic-Tac-Toe is try not to lose. So you would try not to send someone somewhere where you can lose, and you try not to lose on the board that you're currently on. And that's all you'd do. And so if you wanted a simple solution to it, you could probably do it like that. But if you want to win, you've got to plan on how you trap your opponent. So you've got to say, I'm going to win on this board in 5 turns by sending my opponent to many places and threatening so many places they had no choice but to send me to this particular board. And that's usually how people learn to play it after they've played a few games of it. Whether you can code a computer to do that, like, it's really simple to talk about it and you go, use this thing to trap people, and it's like, is the computer going to be able to figure out how to do a trap, you know? So I think that's what makes it interesting. And so Nineboard's good because I think if we played something like Nineboard, it would split the field based on the kinds of strategies that people are using. And so this is something that I would say would be like, I don't know, late game. I think if we've got 6 rounds, this might be around 5, might even be around 6. I don't know. I would have to think about things and balance them. Yeah. So I think this gives you an idea of like how we would go. Like, we would start with something really simple. It's not necessarily going to be tic-tac-toe, but it will be something at that level of complexity. Or maybe a little more. So like, because I honestly think if we did this, people would figure out within the first couple of weeks how to just draw every game, and then it'd be over. But then, you know, making it bigger so you can't do that, like Connect 4 or something like that. Asymmetry, so you have to think very differently about your win-loss conditions. So this is all about win-loss conditions. This one's all about, can you handle the complexity of calculation? And then Nineboard is a bit of everything. Because Nineboard is like, I'll just go back to here. Can you win, but can you also not lose? And then you have to do different things to win as to not lose. As opposed to like normal tic-tac-toe, where you don't lose by winning, in a sense. Or you win by not losing. Actually, you don't win by not losing, but you draw by not losing. Whereas Nineboard, you can definitely kind of use a different strategy to try to win as to try not to lose. And so you need to have both of them, both strategies in a sense, competing against each other in your program. So again, that's the idea, is that these things are going to get more complex as time goes on, and people are going to have to think about how they would do it. I always find it really funny because every time I'm thinking about this, I kind of know too many of the algorithms, so I'm just like, just aim that algorithm at it. You'll just win. Don't worry. And I hopefully I don't really want. I mean, like, that's the thing. That's why if this was a course, it would be like, hopefully you haven't seen all of the good algorithms already. Because if you've seen all the good algorithms already, then like you're just gonna go like week 1, go for the top algorithm and then throw it in and just be like, I'm done. I'm gonna stay on this particular game playing algorithm for like the next 6 months. I think that would be a little bit boring. But at the same time, if everyone got to that point, then we would play different games. But I feel like that would be weird, because if everyone got to that point, what we would have is not a student game playing competition. We'd have a series of postdoc game theory researchers hanging out and like seriously working on games, because that's what it's like. So we see how we go. We see how we go. If you all start to like really, really smash it and start to win things, I will start to think about putting teams together to enter international competitions and stuff like that, because it'll be feasible at that point. Okay, so I think this is my last slide. No, it's not entirely my last slide. But in the game of code, you win or you die. Actually, no. Let's not die. We don't want anyone to die. I just wanted to put that line in there. It made me laugh. But yeah, so as we go through multiple rounds, what we're going to be doing is coding to what I would consider to be quick deadlines. You who have done a lot of university assignments would consider these to be like normal deadlines, but in the real world, when we're out there doing our programming, occasionally someone would say we need this thing in the next 2 weeks. But usually not. Usually we trust our planning well enough to say that this thing's going to be finished in 6 months' time. We're going to work our way through it. We're going to get there eventually, and we need you to do these bits to begin it, and like that's the kind of thing where we've planned for outcomes. So this works most of the time, except for, say, in companies like there's this little company called Zoom that was doing this little niche product, but then the whole world went online, and then they suddenly had to start coding some things really quickly to get features going in their product. So for them, yes, that's the kind of thing where your deadlines end up much, much faster. But I think in the real world, generally, we've got enough space to develop things. So I would say that this is pretty quick turnaround. We're also going to be doing things like code reviews, sharing code at the end of each round, sort of working on this iterative kind of thing where we share our code and then we look at the next problem, we plan and strategize, and we implement, and then we get to the end, we review, and we share our code again. So I say here, it's a magical bait and switch. You accidentally learnt so much. So I'm going to translate this entire kind of thing into another idea of what this might be. Quick turnaround development sprints with code reviews at the end. Iterative test-driven development. You learn a bit of game theory and AI algorithms, and what you end up with at the end of this is accidental agile. It's not all of agile. It's missing some crucial bits and pieces in it, but there's a lot of this which is like, often when I want to teach people production skills, I'll do something like this, where it's like we do agile super light, where what we do is we do these quick turnaround sprints and reviews at the end of them, and that's enough to get people started into the kind of mentality of getting working code happening in small turnaround times, and then people start for themselves planning how much they can do in that time frame. And there's nothing like a bit of like that competition deadline pressure to be like, I work this much every 3 weeks, and then by the end of it you start to be really good at figuring out how much work you do in 3 weeks. And that leads into what agile is. It's like saying, this is what I'm going to get done next, and this is how much of my time I think it's going to take. And then when you get to the end of, say, the 2-week sprint, you say, okay, it worked. Or you go, we ran into more problems than we expected and it didn't, and we go, that's fine, we'll just push it back, and things like that. So it's the way that a lot of companies tend to work, is this rough methodology known as agile. It's like I think it's technically a manifesto. It's not even a technique, but it's the idea that what you do is you do what you need to do at the time, but you finish what you're doing. You don't get bogged down in it. You finish a part of what you're doing, and you have a look at it and figure out whether it's working or not, and then move on again. And either you continue in the same direction, or you change direction if you need to, i.e. agility, right? Ability to change direction. So yeah, that's what I was saying at the end here. I really should pitch this to CSE as a course. I have really clear learning outcomes here. And on top of that, so I don't know if you know much about like the different lecturers in UNSW and our kind of job titles and stuff like that. So there's one fundamental difference between two strands of lecturer, and one is just normal lecturer, no other words around it, and that's people who do, you know, cutting edge research, and then they pass on some of that research-based knowledge in teaching to students. So you'll get a lot of your lecturers who teach you, who you notice or you know or hear about, are absolute specialists in particular fields. And one of the best things about learning from them is they will tell you exactly what is happening in this field. They'll have a good idea of what's happening in the future, and they'll give you straight from the horse's mouth. You will learn exactly these things that are really happening. People are really working on them. The other side, which is actually the side that I'm from, is the one with the subtitle, which is education focused lecturer. And an education focused lecturer, hey, is chat working? I just haven't seen chat turn up for 10 minutes. Maybe people are just listening and not chatting. But someone typed something in. The last thing I can see is Michael Gribben was posting about the AlphaGo documentary, and I haven't seen any chat since. So I don't know if everyone was just so engrossed that no one was saying anything or not, or I've missed a whole bunch of chat for some reason. It just strikes me as weird that nothing happened. Oh no, there you go. People saying no, people were just listening, I guess. Okay. So where was I going? Where was I going with that? People are just entranced, as Jason says. Okay, so thank you. Chat's working. So as an education-focused lecturer, the idea is not just to teach a lot, because that's obviously part of it, because education focus means I'm focused on educating people. Alex said entranced by the lovely monotones. I think the interesting thing that UNSW would like to get out of people like myself is to advance UNSW's capability to educate people. And I have a feeling that this is that. Now, I need to figure out whether this works or not. I need to test it out and stuff. But what I want to do is I want to run a course that doesn't that doesn't just go, here's some theoretical stuff in a lecture, here's some practice in a tutorial, here's an assignment where you show whether you can do it and you get some mega stress to see how well you can do it in a hard way, and here's an exam at the end to check everything you know. What I want to do is a course where you just do stuff. I take you through stuff, you do stuff, and you're interested in it because it has its own motivation for you to do something. It's like, do you want to take part in this competition? And there's a whole bunch of people in chat right now who are like, I just want to compete. And I'm just like, yes, you do. You want to do this, right? So you do it. And then while you're doing it, you don't realize what you're learning because you're fulfilled in the doing of it. And it's not like you're sitting through a boring lecture, because the lectures are not going to be just like, here's the theory of this thing. What I'm going to be saying in this lecture is, remember that last time how we tried to do this thing? Here's a technique that will do it. And you'll be like, oh, I can use this right now. You know, it's instantly in context, and it makes sense because we've created an environment for you to play in. You know, that's what the competition is. It's an environment for you to play in. And when do people learn the best? When they're playing, right? This is all coming out of like all this stuff like Human Resource Machine and stuff like that, where I'm just like, how do we get back to real instinctive learning, like learning with no effort, learning where all the energy that you put into something is there because you want to be there. It's not there because you think you need this in your future for your work or anything like that. It's not there because you go, I must get high marks or else I will lose the university game of getting arbitrary numbers next to my name and all this kind of shit. You're there because you find it interesting and you want to be there and you get sucked into it because it's a cool thing to do. And then you get to the end of like the 10-week term and I say to you, this is what you know now. And you're like, holy shit. You know, and I go, look at this. This stuff is how companies work. They work on these same kind of development patterns. You're now production ready. You know, You can hop into a company now and treat it like this tournament, and you'll be like, oh, I can do that. I know exactly how much work I can get done in those 2 week sprints, you know. Um, and in the middle of it, you're also like, oh yeah, we did heaps of code reviews. We reviewed lots of different people's code, and then what we did is we took that code and we changed it, and then we made it something that was more useful for everyone. We made it work for a wide audience of programmers. I was like, look at these skills. These are like genuine professional skills that people need in coding teams, and I can double down on this and make this not an individual course, but make it a group work course. Because like everyone, like I always know the complaints people have with group work. It's like I got stuck in a group, and I had to do all the work, and it really annoyed me that I had to do all the work. So, and I couldn't leave the group. I had to do the assignment with them and stuff like that. What if the course has 5 assignments and they're 2 weeks long each, and you don't have to stick with the same people? You're like, it didn't work very well with those people. I'm going to look for a new group next time. Or I'm going to go it alone for 1 or 2 of these just to see what it's like. And then it'll be like, I worked with one friend and that was cool. Now I'm going to work with another friend. No hard feelings. We're just going to see how we all work together and stuff. And then you actually get a better experience of group work, because it becomes more like real work, where you jump around between teams within your company as needed, or you jump around between companies because you learned as much as you could for a particular company, so you go for a job somewhere else. Or your friend in another company says, we have a job that fits you really, really well. Do you want to come over? It's like a lot of the time us moving between jobs is just someone tapping you on the shoulder and going, hey, I know you and I know what you do. Trust me, you will like it here. And you go, oh, I'll give it a shot, that kind of thing. Yeah. Let me see what people are talking about. We all simultaneously left, says J-Man. Vionroy, how do I know I like CSE? That's a question. That's a question because I did Comp 1511, thought maybe it's gold, but it's really based on luck whether or not you get the output. And people are saying, oh no, Morgan says chicken cam. Oh, so you just got here, Morgan, maybe? Yes, this is the new chicken cam. Oh. I should set up a microphone next to her as well. Chicken cam and chicken mic. Yeah, it's hard to say. I think whether it's luck or not, I think it's something that you're whether you're enjoying the search or not, in a sense. Like, how like whether things work or not, and then finding out how to make things work or not. I think that's very much like that's how you find out whether you're enjoying computing or not. You could also ask whether you have any inclination to get involved with something like I'm talking about tonight, because you don't need much. The mildest inclination to get involved with something like what I'm doing tonight, and that's probably enough. The hooks are already in. Your brain wants it. Oh, Jason was saying anything notable from my experience. So I think for everyone here, Jason's asking you about the recent iteration of Comp 1511 and what people thought of it. So I've done a lot of thinking about it, but I'm not in the mindset right now about it. But I think a lot of the things that people were talking to us about in the student feedback from 1511 were things like the course cruises in the first half, where we onboard everyone into programming in general. So we've got variables, we've got if statements, while loops, arrays. All of those concepts are things that are kind of fundamental to programming, fundamental to multiple languages. So anyone with prior experience would be like, yeah, I can just do that, no worries. All I need to do is just learn the C syntax. In between that, I'm teaching other stuff, so there's still stuff to learn. Like when you're talking about problem solving, debugging, and just like the mindset of problem solving and computer science, which is much bigger than programming, so there's still other stuff in there, but I think technically people find it easy to just kind of cruise at that point. And then when we go, okay, memory addressing, now we're thinking of a very abstract add-on to programming, is like not just the fact that stuff appears in memory, but that we can point to things in memory, and pointing to things in memory gives us this kind of ability to abstract things one step further away from what we can understand. And when that happens, that hits a lot of people very hard. I have made many changes to 1511 over the past couple of years to try to soften that blow, and I have not seen that significant a shift in the student feedback about it. So I like to think that I am a professional lecturer, and I spend a lot of time and effort on, you know, being as close as I can get to the top of my game in terms of like, how well can I put ideas into people's heads? How well can I shift people's attitudes towards, you know, I think the biggest thing that I try to do is like shift people towards caring about what they want to do in programming. And computing, you know, like care about your own future so that you're committed to sort of doing this. That's like my biggest thing. But even with everything I know how to do, making all these like little tweaks and shifts and changes to try to make the path less bumpy, I still haven't succeeded. So it's going to be a while, I think. So that was one thing. The other thing I think that students are craving is contact and support. So I think one of the other things that people are asking about is help sessions. I want to say that I would say that help sessions are not the answer. I would say that they're a symptom. A lot of people needing one-on-one help is a symptom of something else. So in the past, I thought that the solution might be and I've received this feedback in very, very polite ways. There's a few people who are very, very not polite about it. But in the past, I thought maybe the solution is just to throw another 20 tutors at help sessions. Just make it so things just really fast, you know? So people just get their turnaround of their help immediately. There's always people available. That's stupidly expensive because we're suddenly turning a course that's supposed to be able to teach everyone, like it's supposed to be an accessible course, so everyone gets a shot at the course. So if we've got 1,000 people and everyone wants one-on-one help, then suddenly we can't afford to run the course. So it's not a good idea to go for those solutions. Also, it's like putting a band-aid on a big gushing wound. You know, like we cannot handle the number of people that need one-on-one support. So what we should be doing is thinking about at the fundamental level of the course, why do people need one-on-one support? So we need to look back over the way we're teaching things, the level of communication we're giving people, and whether we're giving people enough at the right times, and making it digestible in the right way so that people don't get so lost that they can't find their way out themselves. Because giving people one-on-one support is good and it's useful and it's very good for your education in a sense. But what it also tends to do is build a reliance on people, which is the whole point of a university degree, is in a sense giving you the ability to rely on yourself. You know, like the difference between just kind of like, you know, when people always joke about it, like, I just want to go learn on YouTube. I can get better content by just watching random YouTube stuff, which is true because my stuff's on YouTube. I just wanted to say that. It's just fun. It's not just because my stuff's on YouTube, but other people's stuff's on YouTube and it's just as good. But I think that the true value of spending a lot of time in a university degree and stuff is by the end of it, you come out knowing that you don't need it anymore. You come out going, yeah, I did a lot of learning in there. And in between learning from other people, I did a lot of teaching myself how this stuff works. I now no longer need anyone to teach me ever again. Anything I want to know from here on, I can apply what I've learnt, not directly, but what I've learnt nearly subliminally at university, I can apply that to just learn anything. I want to switch careers. I'm not going to go back to education to switch careers. I'm just going to switch. And I'm going to teach myself what I need to know, and I'm going to find my way out there, you know? And I think that that's like one of the most powerful things that you can get from a kind of big, heavy education, like a university tertiary education. I think of it as a big, heavy education. It's like just trying to find the right adjectives for it. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So going back to my experience, that's kind of, I think those are the big things. I actually don't really look at, I read everything that's written, but I don't look at the positive feedback as much as I look at the negative feedback, because the negative feedback is phrased in a good way by, in my experience, people, where they ask the question of you, what could be done to improve this subject? And we get a lot of useful constructive criticism there. I also get a lot of there's not enough chicken on screen in the negative feedback. I'm just like, I just wonder who else reads this. You know, I know my boss reads this, right? Like Andrew Taylor, who's my sort of immediate superior, reads like everyone's my experience. So he's just going to be like, yes, that's Marc's cat. Obviously, Marc's cat is incredibly popular. And people are taking the time out to write feedback about Marc's cat instead of the course. I appreciate it. It's cute. It's funny. Yeah. But it's funny sometimes when it's like needs more chicken cam. After this, people are going to expect chicken cam in the actual lectures. I'm just like, no. There's a time for stuffing around and it's a time for working. But we'll see how we go with that. It'll be funny if people do make requests for more chicken in a legitimate way, because there's no way to legitimize it. She's just a cat. She's just having fun and she's cute and that's nice, you know. But we're not going to sacrifice lecture time for chicken cam. What are people saying there? Oh, Sulux is saying, oh, I may not have had the right story about Deep Blue. Maybe I don't even know the right story. The IBM was like a publicity stunt to push IBM. That's interesting. Yeah, right. Okay, so it's a very different idea from what I had. Mine might not even be true. It might just be an anecdote. Jason's asking, is the decision to include for loops while true break continue something a lot of consideration goes into? Yeah, heaps. So it's kind of like when we think about it, 1511 should be a theoretical basis for programming in the future. So when you have too many different things that do the same thing, you're just going to confuse people and they're not going to learn looping as a concept. What they're going to learn is there's 8 different ways to start and end a loop, instead of the way we do it, where it's like there's like kind of one way to start and end every loop. And then what you need to learn is how to loop things. Not that C has lots of different ways of doing exactly the same thing. We already have trouble with that, with like strings and characters and stuff, because C has too many different functions that do it. And they're all just different enough, just subtly different enough that you need to learn more than one of each of them. And that's super annoying. And I find that also, I get complaints that strings, characters and strings is one of the lesser understood topics out of all the topics, because it's just fiddly and it's just standard library functions. And none of them are easy to remember because they're all weird and they all have different formats for their inputs and outputs. Like strcmp breaks the sort of standards, the conventions that we would have for if-else statements with 1s and 0s. So it's a 0 for true, and it's a 1 or a -1 for false. But there's a reason for that, because it's measuring distance between things. So yeah, maybe, but annoying. And bad for beginners. So that's why a lot of that stuff that you're asking about, Jason, doesn't end up in the course, because it's like, how do we guarantee that people understand what looping is, so that in the future they can loop in many different ways in many different languages? And that's why the while loop is being the most open loop out of all of them, and the most simple the most simple syntax, and it can be read top to bottom. So for loop can't be read top to bottom because you iterate it inside the top loop, and you have your initializer and your you iterate everything, because it's everything on one line. You can't just read it vertically. So that's why the while loop over the for loop, even though both of them will do everything, because for loops you can just leave some of the fields empty and it'll do all exactly the same things as a while loop. But between the two of them, it's easier to read a while loop if you've never seen any code before, and the only thing you've learned before are if statements, because they're exactly the same, but they just go back to the top again when they finish. Whereas the for loop, you have to explain all the other conditions as you're explaining it. So that's just that particular example. But break and continue, similar kind of thing. You can't read vertically if you have breaks and continues. They're keywords that you have to memorize in order to be able to use. So they end up being like, on a small scale, but fundamentally relevant, they're rote learning, because you're just memorizing something and it doesn't follow any of the rules. Like break and continue break the rules of the loop. So the rules of the loop are you keep going until you hit the curly bracket and you go back to the top. And if you only have those rules, you can still do everything with the looping, but you don't get bogged down in detail, and you don't get bogged down in thinking about how many different ways you can do the same thing, because you can break or you can exit based on the if statement, the question in the loop itself. And you go, what if we only exit the loop on that thing, and then we will just always be following the loop rules? And you can just sort of get around that. You go, okay, we're just not going to do certain kind of things, because certain kind of programming constructs we know are better if you have break and continue. And so we're not going to work on them yet. We'll work on them in later subjects and stuff like that. But what we're worried about is whether people can fundamentally loop through things or not. Because that's kind of like where the pass-fail barrier is. That's where my head has been stuck for the last like week or two. Like we've got a lot of people on the boundary of pass-fail, and lots of little different issues with marking. I've been working a lot on just trying to like make sure that like if we pass someone for 1511, they must be able to do looping, right? They have to be able to do that to be able to move on to the next subjects, or else the next subjects become like extortionately hard. And I use the word extortion on purpose, because if I pass someone who can't survive the next course, it's like I've taken several $1,000s in 6 months away from them. You know, it's a really mean thing to do. And it's weird, right? Because you have to get it into your head psychologically when you're marking and assessing people, is that close to the boundary between pass and fail, you have to figure out what's the most humane thing that you're going to do. It's like, are you ripping the band-aid off right now just so that the person won't get hurt in the future by things they don't understand? Or are you going to give them a chance and let them go through and then just sort of roll the dice on whether they're going to be okay or not? And it's weird, you know. Like when I failed a course when I was in uni, it was weird, because like I knew why I failed. Like it was really obvious to me why I failed, as I did not spend enough time on the course. Like, but it's not always like that for everyone, right? Everyone's got different reasons. Some people, it's like, if we just gave them more time, if we gave them another run of the course to do this with no pressure, you know, maybe they'll be like really confident moving forward. Whereas so if I pass someone who gets like a 45 or something like that, and then what they do is they go into the next course behind, and they stay behind for their entire degree, because there's no catching up. Like, I mean, I guess there is. Some people there is, definitely. But a lot of the time, if you're already behind and you get launched into something harder, less goes in than would have gone in otherwise, you know? So you learn less, and then you start learning even less, and it compounds. And if you just sort of like find your way through, or the pass-fail threshold is set wrongly in the courses, you end up not being able to catch up again. Then you get to the end of a degree and you're like, I don't really know anything. Like, I feel like I don't know anything from this degree. And then you're like, okay. But then what that does is you don't realize you probably do know stuff. You probably know heaps, but you feel like you don't. And then it erodes your confidence into where you're going afterwards. So it's like, these are the things that go through my head sometimes when I'm near the end of marking, is it's like knowing that every little thing I do is going to affect a lot of people, and it's really going to change their lives one way or the other. And you have to be like, if you're going to, like, a lot of you are going to be tutors, a lot of you are tutors and stuff. You have to understand that you are significantly affecting people's futures, and you have to take responsibility for that. So I think this is why I get super depressed at the end of every term, because it's no longer kind of a fun voyage of discovery. I have to tell people whether they can continue on it or not, you know, whether they got to go back to the start or whether they're ready to go on. And it's like this, like, that's a really heartbreaking decision where you have to say to someone, you're going to be better if you don't go on. And logically, I can fully understand it, you know, like, of course, I've turned it over in my head a million times, and I've said it's better for me to tell people to do this course again than it is to send them on to the next one. Because if I send them on to the next one, I'm putting a nail in the coffin. I'm sealing their fate towards further failure. But I mean, like, this used to happen because I used to actually talk to people in person. Obviously 2020 that was not going to happen, but I used to interview people in person who were right on the border of pass fail, and people would, you know, like, it's an obvious reaction to be like, when you're really under it and you think that you need to succeed no matter what, people would get really emotional, and it's really tough, you know, because you're kind of hurting someone, but at the same time you have to say to yourself, what's the logic here? Can I actually act logical here? And can I say to them, it's better for you to come back than it is to immediately go into an inevitable failure in the next course? And it's like, it's so tough, because it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how right you are. It doesn't matter how right I am in doing that to someone. That doesn't make it hurt me or them any less. So I think that's why the time in between terms is always the hardest for me. And also, that's pretty callous, me just going, oh, it's real hard for me. You know, it's like, fuck, I'm gonna get paid anyway, you know? I think it's hard for the students, and when you're in a position of power over other people, you've really got to take care of that. You know, you've got to really take that to heart and just be like, I am in a position of power over other people. I could ruin people's further education just with a little bit of stuff that I do. And I have to live with, like, this idea that I have done this. I've definitely done it. I've definitely ruined multiple people's education over the last few years. It's just inevitable. It has happened. But it's like, I still have to just be like, okay, I have to make the decisions I make at the time I make them, and I have to at least think about them carefully and do what I believe is correct, even if the difference between my logical brain and my emotional brain are just screaming opposites at each other, you know? Because I just really want to say to people, it's okay, keep going. The world of computing is ahead of you. Keep going towards it. And it's like saying to someone, like, you're injured and you're on crutches, go climb that hill. You know, it's like, oh, they're going to break their leg if they do that, you know? Whereas what I really should be saying is, why don't you rest here for a bit, get better, and then go? You know, that's actually a decent analogy as I say that. But yeah, but it's still hard, because you feel like, and I think a lot of students will feel like, I would be holding them back from what they can do, and I have to somehow be the judge of what they can do. Like, what right do I have to judge what someone else can do? I know it's technically what I'm being paid to do, but it still feels like bullshit to me, you know? Like, no one has the right to really judge what other people are, like, capable of. And I always like to believe that, like, it doesn't matter even what I say. What people are capable of is a matter of time. It's a matter of how much time they want to put into something, and they'll get there eventually. And I still believe that, but I still have to say there is a line, you know, between whether people should go on or not. Anyway, I didn't think I was going to go there. But yeah, it's just interesting stuff, that. Um, what are we talking about? I was just going to go back through chat here. Oh, there's chicken getting up and having a little stretch. I was like, are you finished whinging, Mark? Antarctican said jar mug. Yes. It's a jar with a handle on it. It's very silly. It's peak hipster because it's never had a lid screwed on it. Peter was saying, I think part of the symptom, or part of the reason people need one-on-one support is just a symptom of it being a year one course. You don't have anyone to turn to for even talking about the course. Yeah, I think so. I think people might be stuck on their own, maybe a bit lonely as well, and we've thrown them kind of off the deep end, in the deep end, with stuff like not just computing, just university education. I think one of the hardest things that I have, the hardest jobs that I have as a first year introductory course lecturer is convincing people not to do 100% of the work, because it flies against everything people have been trained to do up to this point, especially through high school and stuff like that. Is they've been trained to finish everything, complete everything, and stuff. And what I'm trying to tell you is that that's infeasible. It was probably infeasible in high school, frankly, but it doesn't matter because you were being pushed to do it nonetheless. But it's certainly infeasible at university, and definitely infeasible after university. So I have to convince people that, like, if you get something like 60% of the subject complete, you're competent and ready to continue. And people are like, whoa, no, 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 that's does not compute. Cannot do this. Must finish everything. And especially, and I think this is something that people don't realize, is that UNSW, most universities actually, but UNSW in particular, UNSW computing, what's the ATAR cutoff? Um, the ATAR cutoff was like 92 or something like that. So you get this kind of thing where you may have been one of the smart people at school, because if you got above 92, you're one of the smart people at school, depending what school you go to. Some schools are super elite, but whatever, who cares about that? you, you're all like the top 10% of New South Wales, for example. And then you take the top 10% of New South Wales, you make a new cohort out of that. And suddenly, whatever position you felt like you were in terms of how smart you are, you're definitely not that high anymore. You're down somewhere else. So people saying 93 or 91 guaranteed entry. Um, yeah. So like when I was in high school, I think I got like a 98 or something like that. And I thought I was fucking hot shit. I thought I was so smart. I was like, I will like outdo anyone, I'm so intelligent. And then I went into software engineering at the time, had a 96 cutoff. And so I went from thinking I was like the top 2% of everything to like, I don't know, roughly the bottom 50% of my cohort. And it was funny how my entire attitude towards education changed. I used to be the one who was like expecting to top something, you know. I wasn't going to top every subject, but I was going to top something, I was going to just stroll in and be the best at something. And then suddenly I was like, being the best at something when I got to computing at UNSW was 100% out of reach. 100% entirely, like, inconceivably out of reach. I was never going to be able to top any subject at university, no matter how hard I tried. And it was like, holy shit. It's like taking a metaphorical hammer to the face and just having to be like, you need to readjust everything that you want to do. Which is why I end up failing a course. And someone who got a 98 shouldn't really fail a course ever. Like, someone at my kind of objective level of intelligence should have been able to minimum pass everything. But then, like, it was more like I derailed my own attitude towards everything. And so I think we do need to identify that. We talk about imposter syndrome and stuff like that. I think the things that we're starting to learn more about stuff like imposter syndrome is not a syndrome at all. It's a reaction to external threat. So like the way that we've kind of been thinking about imposter syndrome for the last few years has been like it's something that develops inside a person, and it's like, nah, it's not even remotely that. It's something that develops because external threat convinces someone of something. And so I think that when we start to look at external influences that cause that cause a great number of people to think a certain way, we realize that the solution to imposter syndrome has nothing to do with how an individual thinks, and it has nothing to do with their attitude towards what they're doing or whether they can overcome a situation. It has to do with fixing the situations that are around people that are causing people to go into that kind of way of thinking. And I find that really interesting, especially as an educator. I find that very interesting because it empowers me again. So it empowers me again to try to build situations where people don't feel as bad. And yeah, so I'm working towards it. I'm not that good at it yet, you know. I've got a lot of learning myself left to do before I can really create like a genuinely safe environment for new people. But we'll see how we go. I'm still working on it. What are we saying? Peter was saying stir comp. Oh, Salux was saying that. Oh, that that Kasparov was actually really pissed off about that thing I was talking about because the IBM people had kind of changed what Deep Blue did to screw with him. Interesting. So that was, I think, maybe part of my story was right, but not complete. Peter was saying Stircomp also behaves differently if it runs under Valgrind, so stuff goes weird. And then you were crying about a bug that took you 3 days to figure out. Hey, 3 days is not bad. 3 days is decent for most bugs. But then again, when the assignment is due in 2 days and you have 3 days for a bug, then yeah, probably not as good. Swathy's asking, oh, you still haven't got your comp mark because of LE or something. Do you know when you will get it? I'm not really doing 1511 stuff here and now, but there are emails going out at some point very soon, so that everyone will know exactly where they're up to. I mean, I did say that the emails were coming out when we released the marks, but I think that was like nearly a week ago. So I know a lot of people have been looking for it, but like we're getting there. There's like, I think the thing I have to say about currently about 1511 is we have an unprecedentedly high number of students, and also a much higher number of issues with people's marks at the end that were hard to finalize and took like individual attention to each of them, and you can't, yeah. So we're getting through them, but you know, not as quickly as we would have gotten through them with previous cohorts. So I don't know if that changes your expectation or not, but I know that we're taking longer than we usually would, just by the sheer number of people we're dealing with. But we'll get there eventually. Michael was saying it can spiral out of control quickly and also lost interest in the subject completely. I'm not sure which bit we're talking about there, Mike. I wonder if we're talking about the weird things in Comp 1511, the bits where it gets hard in a strange way. Twan saying Faha gonna have to do Comp 1512 and you're a humanities guy who's never touched coding before. Don't worry, there's plenty of people who have never touched coding before. And I've actually seen plenty of people who hadn't touched coding before pick it up decently through the bits and pieces at UNSW. If you got through 1511, you're in a good place to continue. And depending on how confident you are with stuff in 1511, you'll probably still be able to get a lot of what's going on. There's always like going back over things if you need. I think that's one of the difficulties with the holidays, the break in between terms being so short. Like, are we back Are you back on Monday next week? Or is it the week after? I think there's one more week, right? But even so, there's not really enough time to get a good reset. So there's not enough time to kind of relax, get kind of worked up again to do some revision on things that you think you might need next term and then start next term. So the break's a bit quick like that. But hopefully once you're rolling into the next term, you're learning new things and you can pick up those new things as if they're like completely new instead of having to rely on things that you think you may have forgotten. And also remembering again the whole idea of like you don't have to do it all. So if you don't have to do it all, then you don't have to remember it all. You can probably remember enough and you'll get away with it. And J-Man was saying, yeah, don't worry, a huge number of you didn't even know what code was before the course. I was pretty similar. I'd done some random computing stuff as a kid. Back then we were writing BASIC. I don't recommend. And when I was writing BASIC, it was like, yeah, just typing stuff in that I'd seen online. Not really not online. It was in books. There was no online when I was doing that. Literally, there was no internet. But anyway, back in my day, we had to walk through the snow to get to a computer, and it was uphill both ways. I feel weird because it literally was true that there wasn't an internet. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, I didn't really start coding in any way until I got to uni. I still got through okay. Oh, and like if the other thing, we're talking about pointers and stuff like that. Yeah, I didn't understand pointers until like second year. It's just like, I don't know what the fuck's going on here. What does the star do? What does the and do? What does the dot do? Why is there a dot and like other times there isn't? Like, what the hell, And so you can still get through stuff. It seeps in slowly. I should also talk about like just the educational theory of a lot of the stuff in Comp 1511 is to plant an idea in your head that you don't understand. Because if you get an idea in your head that you don't understand, the second time you see that idea, you have a decent chance of picking it up. And if you don't pick it up the second time, then you have two really similar ideas in your head. And then the third time you see it, you might pick it up then. So don't worry too much if all you have is vague ideas of what you might need to know. Because when you see it in the future, it's much easier to pick it up if that vague idea had settled in at some point in the future. Some point in the past. So that's also like some of the educational theory of 1511. It's an introductory course. It's not designed for complete knowledge of things. It's designed to plant seeds in a way that will not necessarily grow immediately, but next time you hear it, maybe it grows. Next time after that, maybe it grows. But if you hadn't had it the first time, then you'd have that same first time experience in a couple of years, and you'd have to wait longer for something to stick. So it's actually it's okay if things don't stick perfectly, if they just stick enough. People are talking then about getting in. Someone got in with an 85. So there are ways in without being like a 90 something plus student. It's really, really funny. What was I gonna say? This is 2019 when I first started teaching at UNSW. I asked them about what level you need to get into comp sci, and when they told me it was in the 90s, I just cracked up laughing during the lecture. I was like in front of the lecture, I was just laughing because when I did I didn't do comp sci, I did software engineering, but the cutoff for comp sci was 65 back then. So that was before the current iteration of Silicon Valley existed and stuff, and the current idea of like tech being a good place to do things and software engineers being the most sought after profession in the world. It was before any of that stuff happened. We were still in a bust boom phase, like the dot-com bust and all that kind of stuff. And so we had what looked like a volatile industry that may not survive in a sense. And so there was like only people going in who really wanted it. So it wasn't remotely as competitive, I think. Sulux is saying that whole thing happened to you when you were 14, so the whole idea of like you thought you were smart and then stuff happened and it made it harder. Oh, you went to Sydney Grammar. Yeah, so you ended up in one of like Sydney's most elite schools and that might make things difficult. And Hussein was saying 91 selection rank is the guaranteed entry, which means you can get in on a lower entry. And J-Man said you had adjusted points carrying. So, you know, that might be okay, the adjusted points, because what you were doing was you were doing well in particular maths and science, and that's what applied reasonably well to computing. I mean, it's up to you to think how well that applied. Twan said, true, I did standard maths and spent most of the time last term for 1131. Got 66. It is hard uni's life. Yeah, but like 66 is a credit. That means you've got more than you needed. So that's decent. I wouldn't be worried too much about that. I got a present for you. Let Uncle Mark get some literature for you to read. So this is, yeah, doesn't matter. Not important. Mark Chi, Bachelor of Engineering, blah blah blah. Where's that academic transcript? So my first year academic transcript, computing 1A, which is what it was at the time. That's comp 1011, many iterations before now. 84. I thought I was pretty good. I think a lot of people who I'm giving marks to, who are now getting higher marks than me, are going to find it quite funny that I didn't do as well as they did in the subject that I now teach. My maths 1A was a 71. I did business data management. I think that was a software engineering thing. I got 72 there. I did psychology 1A. I passed that with a 64. And a software engineering workshop where I passed that one with a 70. So it's kind of like I got one distinction, 3 credits, and a pass in my first term at UNSW. So I think it's important for people to think. It's quite funny. You probably weren't expecting me to just like read out my academic transcript. It was from a while ago, but whatever, you know, like it doesn't, like I don't think I could have done that much better than that at that point. And so you don't need everything, you know. You can still be at the point where people trust me enough for me to teach this stuff when I proved ages ago that I couldn't necessarily do it all. You know what I mean? And I worked as an engineer, you know. I worked as a systems engineer, which is like a combination of sort of engineering problem solving, and I was doing a lot of coding as well. What else did I do? I worked as a research officer as well, which is like usually like reserved for very high level academic people because it's a pathway into maybe doing a master's or a PhD and stuff like that. Also got into a PhD as well, so obviously the marks must have ended up decent enough for that. But you know, you don't have to have gotten that high marks to be like a reasonably well trusted, competent software engineer. So I think it's good to kind of think of it like that. Like, there's a joke that P's get degrees, as in you only need passes to get your degree, and it's true, you know. And then you'll find that a lot of stuff at the university is calibrated for competency, like useful competency. So whether you're going into research or business or just want to make stuff for yourself even and stuff like that, you can do it with credits, you know, like you can do it with marks in the 60s. And everything above that is a measure of how much random cool stuff that you were doing during the course. Were you exploring things a little bit deeper? Were you hungry for other things? You find that when you're hungry for more knowledge, you start to get higher marks in particular courses. But it just sort of flows one way or another like that. So it's not something that like your baseline can be pretty low. in terms of uni marks, and that doesn't actually mean you don't understand what's going on. It's only if you drop below 50 that then like that's the point at which your assessment is saying that you don't have enough of this. You shouldn't go on from this because you don't have enough of it. If you want to continue on in this particular path, go back and do that thing again. You just need to go back over it. And that's kind of fairly normal, you know. Everything we do when we're needing to learn things always involves going back over things that we don't understand, you know. And so the university does it in a weird and arbitrary way like that, because you could consider it differently if we did university in a different way. And what we did was we said to you, here are some exams. I like this because it's like a martial arts thing. You can do gradings to increase your rank. So you get a new belt color and it's very exciting and stuff, and you show what you can do. Your teacher, your sifu or your sensei or whichever thing that you're in, is going to look at you and say, you're ready for the grading. And so it'll come around and they'll just say to you, you should take this grading now. And you'll be like, am I ready? And and they'll be like, don't disrespect me. I know you're ready, so take the grading. You know? But when you're not ready for the grading, they won't offer it to you. So I think like if we could educate like that, we could say to people, you know, look at your performance in the assignment or something like that. And look at how you're going and judge your understanding against this kind of scale. We'll give you some advice on calibrating this. If you're happy with this part of it, take the exam now. If you're not happy with this part of it, keep studying, do other stuff in the course, go back over videos and stuff like that, come back and do the exam in 6 weeks. Like, instead of saying you failed, do it again, we can just say you just need a bit more, you know. You just need to wait, you need to work, and you need to wait, and then you go, and then you're fine, you know. And then we wouldn't be pretending to people that like the failure, you know, it's such a dumb word. Failure is learning. Failure is not a negative thing. Failure is something we're looking for because it teaches us things. Whereas the way that university treats us is like, they put this like kind of what I would call like an unnecessary psychological pressure on people, because this idea that you can pass or you can fail, instead of it being, you just need a bit more time. You're fine. You've got this. You just need a bit more time. Just do the exam later and you'll pass it. But if you take it now, you're not ready for grading, which is why it shouldn't be offered, you know. But instead, we've got a system where it's like just regimented time, instead of having your teacher just tap you on the shoulder and go, next month you can do your grading. And then someone else is like, when do I do my grading? And it's like, when you can kick that thing, you know. But at least you've got a measure there. You've got something that you're working towards, instead of having this just kind of bleak, kind of like hard wall in front of you that says you have to get through this thing, but you have 6 days to get good at it, as opposed to like, who the fuck cares when you're good at something? Like, 'cause it doesn't matter. Like, you know, I didn't start teaching, like, I know I started teaching when I was in uni, like, as a student, I was a tutor and stuff like that, and I knew that something was clicking really well. I knew I wanted to teach and stuff, but I didn't start lecturing at university until a couple of years ago. So, like, compared to other people who get their first, like, kind of entry-level lecturing job, I was a good 10, 15 years older than people who couldn't get their first lecturing job. And so it's weird, right? It took me longer to get the same skill set, or it took me longer to be able to prove that I could do it. But in no way does that make me a worse lecturer than anyone else. In no way does that mean I'm not capable, or even capable of success in the future as a lecturer, just because I had to take a roundabout, rocky, and riddled with failure route to get there. It just took me longer. It's really no big deal. But if someone had told me, you have to make lecturer by the age of 28 or something, which I think plenty of people can probably do, Because that's enough time to finish a degree, do a PhD, and do a postdoc. You know, yeah, you could totally do that. That's the standard path. I mean, that's a bit fast, 28. So let's say 30. If someone told me you have to do it by then or you can never do it, then none of you would ever have met me. It just wouldn't have happened. And then when I think about the deep irony of it is that the way that higher education is done generally is exactly that. They're like, well, if you can't do it by this point in time, then you just can't do maths. And it's like, holy shit, you serious? Maths is just a thing that you can learn. Like, it's not like just because you fail a subject at a particular point in time means nothing. You know? Like, it just means you weren't in a mood for it at that time, right? Could be like, you know, a year later you'll just get an HD in it or something. You know? It's yeah. And so that's why I think that like a lot of people find that when they fail, it feels bad, right? And you can't help that. It's always going to feel bad when it's a system that's set up to kind of make you feel bad, as opposed to the true understanding of education, which is that when you get there, you're there. And the time it takes you to get there is just the journey that you took. It's not super important whether that was in the minimum time or took a different amount of time and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's tough. It's weird. Where are we with chat? I'm sorry, I have been monologuing for a while, so I haven't looked at chat. So people talking about getting in. Someone Shitake was like, taking standard math is your one regret in life. I didn't do the top tier of maths either. Hamish is saying you got 66 and did extension 1 in the HSC. So you did the hard maths in your HSC and still got 66 in uni maths. That's what I found as well. Uni maths was just like the second we sat down for uni maths, it's like they put their foot on the accelerator and then just went for it. And all of us just hanging on, just like, what did was that I? Was that I or one? What happened? It's just like, I don't know what a matrix is. Thought it was a movie. Anyway, yeah. I think that was my experience of university maths. And then I was like, did you know that if you do computing, the computers do the calculation for you? You don't have to do proofs of things. And that made it much easier. I still got an HD in discrete maths though, because it was closer to computing. Anyway, what else are people saying? People talking about getting carried through high school and stuff like that. I think that's like, you know, there's heaps of stuff that we do, especially in university as well, that's actually all about like helping each other. Like if you study with other people and stuff like that. And I think that's the real difficulty, is that like what we really want is people who can collaborate well with other people. Yet all of our assessments are individual, because you can't graduate a team. You can only graduate individuals. Yet immediately after you graduate, you will be expected to never do anything individual ever again. You'll be expected that everything's open and communicated. Everything is done in a collaborative sense. Everything is done in teams and groups, and work units or whatever, like however many people and stuff like that, which is really weird. It's like we train people for really specific things at university, and then we leave out really, really specific training that is like fundamental to what people need to do. So I always find that awkward, but I know it's just like part of like the only way the institution, like something like UNSW, can teach enough people is by going through it all really kind of in a standardized fashion. So you throw everyone in, and you know that you throw information at them, and you know it sticks to about 90% of them, and you go, fine, that's if that's going to work and we can educate like 1,000 people at once with that method, then the extra kind of few hundred people that don't make it through, well, that's just how it is, I guess. And that's the rough bit of, I think, a university education is it's a bit of a trial by fire. It's harder than it needs to be sometimes, but at the same time, it's also the only way that you're going to be able to say to everyone, like everyone in a society, saying to all of them, you can get an education if you want. All you got to do is want it, and you can come along, and there'll be just enough support, but I don't think there is. But maybe there's just enough support to get you through. Yeah. Alex is saying, what? Oh, that's an actual question for me. I should answer this one. 20 minutes ago. Sorry, Alex. What type of prerequisites were you thinking the competition course would have? I think C. I think if you've done 1511, you can start the competition. You might peter out by the end of the competition, but that's fine. I think you'll get to take part nonetheless. You kind of know. You'll realize where your kind of handicap starts to peter out when the code that you get given to start the next round is like 30 a code. That's not going to happen till the end. But the other thing is you might understand it, because the ramp up might actually be enough that you can learn a little bit at a time, and then by the end of it you can actually be like, go and do like the AI course or something like that and just ace the assignments, because you've already got a full understanding of how an AI might function. Maybe not gonna say, because like, again, there's a reason why this is happening on my private stream, and it's kind of, but not exactly attached to CSC SOC. This is like the least official that something can be within the school. It's not even within the school, frankly. It's like kind of doing, like, I've gone rogue, I'm outside the school here. But that's how I'm going to do the experiment, because I'm not going to experiment with people putting thousands of dollars into it, because that's what uni course is, people putting thousands of dollars in. I'm not prepared to take money for this. Because I think, like, I want to play around with this, see how it works, which is why everyone who's going to do this is going to be people who want to do it, either for the fun of it, the challenge of it, or they consider these things here that I think you might learn from it to be worth the risk. And so it's all entirely out of choice, but it'll allow me to tune this to the point where after I've done it, I may be able to go to people like John Shepard and Aaron Quigley, head of school, and say to them, I've done this thing. And I think it has genuine educational potential, and I think it's a good way for us to, in a sense, start to try to turn this whole education thing on its head. Because I don't know if people heard of flipped classrooms. The most basic idea of a flipped classroom is that you don't learn in a lecture. What you do is you watch a video beforehand, or you read something beforehand, and then when you get to class, instead of it being you passively absorb information from the lecturer, you actively discuss the things that you've read in advance. And of course, as we know, students always read stuff in advance if you ask them to read something before you go to class, right? Strategic drink. Because I know the truth of that. No one fucking reads a thing. I think this is the funniest thing about what I think of as the distance between educators and the people they're educating. What you want to do is minimize that distance. Because only people who have sort of distanced themselves from the people they're teaching, so they have a completely different lifestyle, they've chosen to not necessarily empathize with students at all, are going to think that everyone's going to read the material before they get to class. It's kind of like thinking that everyone's going to work on the assignment when I release it. I know some people are going to start working on the assignment when I release it, but those people never needed me anyway. It's people I could have said, here's a website, just work through this and come to the exam in 10 weeks. And they'd be like, sweet. And then they'll still ace the exam. We'd be like, okay, fine, good, whatevs. But obviously that's not the people I need to teach. But what was I going to say? Yeah. So the closer that you can get to understanding who you're working with, and also saying things like who you're working with instead of who you're teaching. Um, the yeah, the more you're going to be able to actually bring them somewhere, rather than just like, like, I don't know, like some people teach by just like dropping content on you from on high. They're standing on their lovely pedestal and just dropping content on you. But like, I came up with this analogy recently. So this involves people knowing about Lord of the Rings. So if you know Lord of the Rings, um, oh, Hamish is going to bed. See ya. Oh, but you said that you pinged me about maybe helping the infrastructure. Awesome. Oh, Ada. Hi, Ada. Oh, and you're saying like law runs everything as flipped classrooms. Yeah. So the flipped classroom thing works on an assumption that that I'm not sure holds a lot of the time. And I think that sometimes flipped works. Um but I think it works in this way. I think it works in terms of like you give people context for what they're doing by nearly getting them to do the homework before you've taught it. So you show them something by sort of throwing them in the deep end like this competition. But as they're working on it, you kind of tell people about, have you thought about this? Have you thought about doing it this way and stuff like that? And so it hooks directly into their brains because they're already thinking about doing things. So it's like you're learning in a very practical manner. It happens as you understand it to be needed, rather than it happening before you need it, and you having to kind of in your mind abstract creatively come up with a reason why you might need to know something, and then afterwards be tested on whether you knew it or not. It just takes so much more mental energy to be able to do that. I think people have always like kind of seen this when someone's trying to teach you something and you just look at it and you go, why would I need this? And you're like, whether or not that's a good thing to say, it's usually not a good thing for you to say, because it'll turn your brain off. And so we have this habit of just going, I see no need for this. This has no bearing on my life or my goals or what I want to do. Why are you teaching this? Why are we being made to learn this? And like you'll see that, right? We definitely see that in ourselves and in others while we're learning. There's always someone who's like, I don't think we're gonna need this. This is bullshit. Um, and that's why I want to try to teach in a different way, where it's like, you know what you need it for? You need it for the thing I'm asking you to do right now. And the reason I'm asking you to do this thing is not just because it's also what I'm teaching. It's like the assessment matches the teaching so well that the only reason you need the teaching is for the assessment. But it's because when you're finished with these things, you have this stuff. So what I do is like I'm trying to throw people into a situation that is so similar to what they're going to need to do when they're in work, that it has amazing context and it's exactly what you need, but it's enough to kind of get you going as it's happening. And then you do that kind of flipped thing then, where it's not just read all this text before you get to the classroom so that you can talk about it. It's like, how are we going on the things that we're interested in doing? And we're doing them because we're interested in doing them. And underneath that, I'm going to try to steer the way that you're doing things so that you will end up getting more kind of capabilities than you were expecting to have beforehand. So there's that kind of thing. Jason's like, move labs 1 week in advance. Maybe, but I think what would happen then is like if I was doing that for something like Comp 1511, which I don't think would necessarily work for 1511, what we would end up doing there is the tutors would just have to do the lecture. The tutors would have to explain the concept and then people would have to use it. I'm not sure exactly what I can do with 1511. I think that it has to be a bit more of a traditional thing. But if I do a higher end course, so if I do a second or third year course, that kind of thing I think can work like this very easily. Because what you can say to people is like, you're already like, I have prerequisites, and using those prerequisites, I'm assuming that you have a certain capability. I want you to demonstrate that capability first, and then I'll show you how it's used in the context that we're working on. I think that might work. Okay, let me go back through the chat. I've missed heaps of stuff back there. Shitaki said, thanks for reminding me to play Fury. I'm not sure what Fury is. Is that a game? Anyway. And Zach and Peter were talking about something to do with weirdness of Sturkump. And Tuan said, having heard your sharing is very comforting for my uni life at the moment. Okay, that's good. I think people saying sharing the Mark law. And Kaichi was like, why did you do 5 courses in a term? Well, when there's only 2 terms in the year, you do a lot of courses. So back then we had half courses as well. So that was a 4-course load, which is a standard load, 8 courses a year, which I think is still the standard load nowadays, 8 courses a year. But we had to do 4 in term 1, 4 in term 2. And we did 5 in term 1 because 2 of the courses were 3 units of credit, which is half load courses. And I can tell you exactly what you are guessing is yes, the half load courses were just as much work as a full load course. There was nothing half about them at all. And Tarktikin was saying, any advice for people going into 1511 with prior coding knowledge? My biggest advice for people going in who already have coding knowledge is don't switch off. The riskiest thing that you can do in the course is to coast and think you know everything already, because then when it hits you, it hits really hard, because you haven't gotten into the habit of getting into work. So I would say do something to keep yourself busy. Whether it's like, ooh, there's a coding competition here, so if you already know what you're doing, you should maybe take part in this. Make sure you're not sitting on your ass when people start running past you. I think in terms of, this is the biggest problem I've ever seen for students who kind of knew what they were doing, and then we're in a course that was uplifting other people. So the course uplifts other people to where you are, and then they're going at this rate, and you're on a flat line. Wait, where we are. You're on the flat line, and they're going at this rate because they're learning all this new stuff and in the rhythm of learning, and then they keep going, and you're like, oh shit, and you try to catch up. So make sure that you're already kind of moving. It's always easier if someone's running past you if you're already jogging along. Like, you're not working hard, but you're already jogging along, you'll catch up. So the worst thing you can do is switch off. When I teach 1511, I try to make sure there's stuff in there for different people. So there's stuff in there for people who have no idea what's going on, and it gives them easy wins. Like the first lab question or the early tutorial questions, everything is just like, here's the basics, just do the basics. Don't try to do anything weird, don't try to do anything special, just do the basics. And that's so that people can be like, oh, I can code. I don't know anything about what I'm doing, but I could get this one little program working, which is good because you just want to get that first step. You want to get your hands on the ledge, and then you can climb up. And then for other people, there's like the Uber challenge exercises, which is like, I teach you something. Can you take what I teach you, develop it into a deeper ramification of possibility, and then work on it? And so it nearly looks like stuff I haven't taught you. It all is, though. It's all based on something that I've taught you. But it's like, can you fiddle with it further? Can you do something weird and interesting with it? And those are things for people so that, like, because it's nearly busy work. It's nearly a hamster wheel. It's there to make sure that you don't stop, because in a 10-week course, momentum is important. You have to keep your momentum through the entire course. There's no point to pause or stop, because if we paused or stopped in a course that short, then we just have to cut a whole lot of content out of the course, and you just miss something important. So yeah, that's my advice. If you already know stuff, is don't get caught in the trap of thinking that you know enough. Because I think this is the thing, is like, the difference between people going, I'm good at something, or I don't really care how good I am, I know I could get better. No, that is good and bad, because the I could get better attitude can always lead towards I'm never going to be good enough. And it can lead to some really devastating kind of psychological self-harm that you can get into there. But a little bit of an attitude of like, there's always something I can learn. is a good way to get going, because then you'll always be like, I'm ready to learn something. I'm also ready to change the way I do things. If I end up learning that the way I've been doing things up until now has been a bit weird, I could do things differently. It gives you flexibility. It gives you the ability to then learn anything in the future. But you never want to be in the mindset of like, I'm good enough at this, and I will not progress any further. Thank you very much. I get that, you know. I've seen that. I've seen students do that. It's the weirdest thing when a student's just like, nah, I don't want to learn that. It's like, why are you here? Like, what you're teaching? No. I don't want any of it. It's like, okay, well then take a break from uni. Like, just go chill out somewhere, like, because you obviously don't want to learn. And this is one of the things, like, when I used to have to do like discipline conversations, not really discipline conversations, but they're like conversations with people who are otherwise thinking of either dropping out of the course or the university or other things like that, is usually just something along the lines of like, oh, what do you actually want to do here? And for plenty of people, it's like, I want to learn what I need so I can get a job in this field or something like that. Like, a lot of people, the first goal is just a job, you know, a job in computing or something like that, because they think that's what their future they want out of their future. Some people, it's like, I don't know really what I want. I'm just kind of here because this followed on from high school. And it's like, well, they're like, they'll tell me something really funny. Like, they'll just like, I want to go into this field. And it's like, you know, they don't do computing in that field. Like, they use computers a little bit, but they don't like develop anything there. And it's like, oh, why am I here? It's like, no, that's my question for you. Why are you here? And it's like, oh my god, I have freedom. I can go and do what I want. So I always find that really funny. And that's why I think during the course I always talk about this thing. I talk about saying, why don't you every now and then ask yourself why you do what you do, and what you might want to do about it, because then you end up in a situation where you're actually going to answer those questions. So you're going to say to yourself, I am here because I want something, and then you will actually aim towards it in your study, rather than like going through your degree saying, I don't even know why I'm here. Because if you keep going through your degree saying, I don't know why I'm here, then you will start saying those things I was saying before, where you're like, why do I even need to know that? I'm never going to use it. And then you end up in a situation where you stop being able to tell the difference between whether you're going to use something or not, because you already don't believe you're ever going to use any of it. And you can work yourself into a pretty bad spiral at that point, and then you end up with kind of nothing. So I did that. I burnt my second year at uni. So by the end of the first year, if I go back to my transcript, it got a lot better. I got like 2 HDs in the second half of my first year. And then in my second year, I went off and failed a subject. And you don't just fail one subject. Everything else was low, and I failed a subject. And it was like, oh shit, I've screwed everything up and stuff, because I really didn't want to be there. I was considering leaving. I was doing really well at music at the time, so I was like playing a lot of music and really caring about what I was doing and stuff. And it was like, yeah, I kind of understood why my computing was going so badly, because I obviously was putting my care and effort into something else. And if I could have gotten around the stigma of failure, or the stigma of dropping out and stuff like that, and deferred a year, then my whole life probably would have been better at that point. I would have been so chill. I would have gone and worked on the music thing for a while. Granted, I wouldn't have made any money at that point, and so, but like, it's not like I was making money at uni either. And then I would have come back with maybe a fresh perspective, or never come back. Who knows? And maybe I would have been just as happy somewhere else. But trying to force and do both things at the same time, not so much. Doesn't really work. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if anything that I'm saying here is worth it. I think when I start rambling like this, you should decide whether you want to take my advice or not. The significant amount of stuff I say is probably not necessarily good advice, but maybe it's stuff you can think about. what other things were people saying? I should wrap this up at some point because we're at my usual 3.5 hours now. People are saying J-Man was saying, just be glad we're not in America with student loans. But then Sulik was saying, just because we don't have it as bad as the literal third world country doesn't mean it's okay. I think both of you have fair enough points there. America's in a lot of trouble. Their education system has gone a little bit weird. And I think that they're going to have to put a lot of work into just getting the idea back that maybe everyone deserves an education. Because I don't think they're really running on that ideal at the moment. And then Suluk's also saying is like, we don't want to compare hardship. Don't ever get into a like a I don't know what you'd call it, a hardship pissing race or something. Just because someone else has it harder than someone doesn't mean that the person who's got it easier isn't still suffering in some way or another. Like, and I think that's something that we always need to remember, is that there's plenty of people out there who look really happy and have objectively a comfortable situation. It doesn't mean they're not suffering. It doesn't mean they're stuck behind something that is significant and kind of sometimes means the world to them, you know, and is breaking their entire world. Always better, I feel, to err on the side of compassion than anything else. But you know, that's just me, not only me. Zach, you sly dog, you caught me monologuing. Yeah, I've been monologuing for the last hour, I think, at least. Yeah, I think J-Man and Sulux kept going on that thread. Dongsu was saying, I'm comp eng, considering of IPTing into comp sci because of all the maths over on the electrical side. The electrical engineering stuff in the comp eng is too mathsy. I mean, you can kind of, I think, like, IPTing across is very easy, because you've got all of the fundamentals already of comp sci, and then your electives, you can just take those electrical engineering subjects and count them as your electives and stuff. But you choose, you know, it's not really, you can see which bits you like more. I'm always really careful with this because it's like I have no right to tell people what degree they should be in. Except for that one time, someone said to me that I was talking to someone. I'm obviously not going to out them, not going to say who they are or anything, but they said to me, they came to me and they said, I failed your course for the third time now. And I was like, okay, all right, this is where we are. And they've said, I don't know if I should take it again because I really don't get it. And this time I worked at it and I still didn't get it. And it's like, okay, so we're in a tough situation here. So I said to them, what do you want to do? Like, do you have aspirations or goals for what you want to do? And they said, oh, I kind of want to get into investment banking and stuff. I want to like kind of get into trading and things. I was like, oh, okay. How's your maths? Have you failed those subjects as well? It's like, oh, no, I pass all of them. And I was like, have you considered the fact that the majority of investment bankers don't know how to code and don't need to know how to code? And if you fail this thing again, the university is going to kick you out, except you haven't failed any of your math subjects. Why don't you transfer to the stuff that you're obviously quite good at? and not only are you good at it, it leads you towards your goal better. And it was just a funny conversation. I think sometimes people think that there's only one path, which is obviously not true. There's many ways to get where you want to be in life, and you don't have to, like, if one path is about to close down all of your possibilities to you, maybe there's other things that you can do. Yeah. It was Hamish saying you're doing software engineering, but you're thinking also of doing an IPT into comp sci, so you have a major, less maths and no engineering subjects. Yeah, I did a lot of weird stuff in software engineering. I think I learned a bit about how to manage projects and stuff, though, So it was decent. But I think that they teach that in comp sci nowadays. So I think you can still get it in comp sci. Because like comp sci at UNSW is an engineering degree without a thesis. Because you come out of comp sci and you get hired immediately as a software engineer, not as a programmer. You get hired as an engineer and you'll just be doing engineering stuff. And then you'll just magically just be like, oh, how come I know all this engineering stuff? And it's because like the School of Computer Science and Engineering teaches engineering to you whether you like it or not. You can't do a theoretical computer science degree at UNSW. You're going to end up doing an engineering degree. I mean, even in 1511, I'm teaching engineering basics, you know? Okay, what other people are saying? Zed Pancakes, what do I do if I forgot all my 1511 knowledge? Am I screwed? Nah, in about 20 years' time, you can be a lecturer like me. I had to relearn it all. Like, this is quite common. All of us are just relearning everything when we go to do something new. I'm teaching graphics in term 3. And if you ask me to write graphics code right now, I wouldn't be able to do it. So I just know that I've got enough time to relearn it before I start teaching it. And it's going to be rusty when I teach it. So it doesn't matter if I've got a whole term to practice it. It's still going to be rusty when I teach it. Because I'll be like, this is the thing I've prepared. And look, everyone, this is how it works. Someone will ask me one question. I'll just be like, oh, I have no idea. I don't know. And I'll be like, hey, you know what's an important skill in industry? Being able to Google things when you don't know them. Let's Google it together now. I'm just pretending I don't know. Of course, I do know it, but I want to show you that you need to Google things. Yeah, everyone doesn't know shit. It's our ability to relearn things that's important, not our ability to memorize things. Oh, Peter said his tutor did 1511 using only Vim since he had coding knowledge already and wanted to just learn something else. So that's other ways that you can make things interesting when you think you already know stuff and you know that there's less to learn, is you can learn something else in the same context. So you're still there in class, you're still there putting effort in and stuff, and so you're in the rhythm of putting effort in for that subject. But before stuff gets hard and starts to really challenge you, you do something like that. You go, I'm going to learn Vim. I never learned Vim. A friend had a mug with all of the keyboard shortcuts of Vim on it, and I thought that was pretty funny because I didn't need the mug to use other text editors. But again, that's just starting a fight, and I'm not sure if any of the people are still here who are going to want to fight me over Vim. And that's a fight I would most certainly lose anyway, so I don't really want to get into it. J-Man, guess I shouldn't have been grinding Genshin for the last 20 days. I keep wanting to get into that game, but I just kind of never get around to it. Is it... I've got it on my phone, but I can't be bothered playing a big action-adventure game like that on my phone. I assume it's on PC as well, and I assume it's free. Maybe I'll download it at some point. We can stream me playing Genshin badly. Suluk said, and then we can maybe play some games as well. I said, but we're probably not going to get there. It's 11:30. Antarctican, you said thanks for the advice. You're welcome. Hopefully it was useful. Abraham, oh my god, this stream is still going, and we've been on this slide for 80 minutes. Yeah, well, we finished the talk. And Alex said Mark is dropping dimes and planting seeds. I mean, hopefully. I try to help. There's this thing where I kind of try to... I believe that education is different from university. I believe there's a lot of things to learn that are very important, and I believe that you're not done when you finish university and stuff like that. So I believe that this is like a commitment to a lifelong sort of pursuit of who you are as a human. And if I can teach people to get on board with that idea, I think they're all going to be kind of a little bit happier with their lives after the fact. So we'll see. We'll see how well I do at that. Peter said, insert Hayden rant. And Ada's wondering what the Hayden rant was. Peter's like, I don't remember when it was, but he mentioned his tally of how many people he convinced to drop commerce. I mean, like, a lot of people in the old world, like maybe 5 years ago, we're doing commerce to make money until everyone realized that you make more money writing code than you do moving money around. Evan said that you like Vim. I'm sure that a lot of people like it, otherwise it wouldn't have been so popular for so long. Because that editor's been around for like 30 years, I want to say. I don't know if I'm just talking about my ass for 30 years, but like I think so. And I think it's because of once you get the muscle memory going, it's just undoubtedly faster than other things. I don't mind too much personally because the way I code is I just don't spend that much time typing when I'm coding. I spend a lot more time thinking than typing. Because I think a lot of the research and stuff I did was in algorithms. It was like that kind of, I always talk about that kind of coding where you spend 3 weeks on a whiteboard and then 1 day in the code editor. So it doesn't matter if you're slower in the code editor. But I think that's because I'm not a programmer. I don't know if that was the right thing to say, but I don't feel like a programmer. I feel like a code designer, not a programmer. It's more likely that if I was working in a big organization, that I would be the one with half a dozen programmers working for me, and I would be talking about our overall approach to things and then trusting them to actually write the code. So what I would be developing is pictures on whiteboards. Still very important. Still like the fundamental building blocks of solving engineering problems and stuff, but I just wouldn't be the one typing actual letters into a computer. I tend to slow the team down when I get involved that level. J-Man said Genshin is on PC and free. That is such a bad a bad piece of knowledge to have. I've been playing Mass Effect though. I just got the Legendary Edition because I played all the Mass Effects when they came out, and I really enjoyed them at the time. They've aged in a weird way, so I mean they're okay. I'm still probably going to play through them first. I've just got so many games in my Steam library that I may never play. Someone told me to get While True Learn, which was a game about machine learning and stuff. So that was on sale recently. I picked it up. Maybe next week we'll stream that. Or something like that. Or we'll stream Genshin. Just for fun. Halogen's making a paper model of a Genshin character for your sister. That's really cool. I haven't been getting very crafty recently. I mean, I did build this guy. That's a Zaku from Gundam. That was fun. I still haven't painted any of it yet. I do more painting than I do building of these things usually, but recently I've just kind of fell out of the motivation to paint, so I just can't be bothered. So this thing's just been sitting on my desk for like a week and a half. Granted, I've been working a lot in the last week and a half anyway, so like the idea of putting more effort into my hobbies hasn't been coming into it. That's why my downtime I've been playing games instead. Ada's like, nah, gedit, the best text editor. I mean, sometimes you want simplicity. I mean, I don't like the fact that gedit's autocomplete function has weird bugs that throws out warnings in the terminal all the time. That's confusing a lot of new students. I may have to do something about that. Halen just said the reason it's free, this is Genshin Impact, is because it has gacha. So yeah, it's made to take a lot of small amounts of money from you, right? So we'll see how they go. And Tactican says Kate is greater than Get It. And that is a fact. I didn't even know Kate. I didn't know there was another editor, especially with a name that's that recognizable. If I'd heard it before, I would have known. Kaiji was like, I thought we said we're not going to get into a war. And that was me saying I wasn't going to get into a fight because I was going to lose it. But people are obviously going to get into fights anyway. I think it's like that kind of thing where people get into the fights nearly for the joy of it. There's no one really cares. It's like Xbox versus PlayStation. It's like, well, 80% of the games are the same. And if you're really, really into your games, you own both, so you really don't care. Mac versus PC. And it's like, aren't you all installing Linux on these things anyway? Don't you just not care? iPhone versus Samsung, and it's like literally made in the same factory. Like, what's the difference? you know. And so like all of these things, like Coke versus Pepsi, I think is the funniest one. That's like real old school. That's like an 80s fight, and also completely irrelevant because cola is like not even a natural flavor. It's a weirdly constructed thing. But they've turned into like the most common drinks that get sold. So there's two brands. People will unnaturally adhere to one or the other and then fight people who think the other way. It's all just like, it's nearly like us as humans were made to fight each other, and all we wanted was a reason. I guess that's why, like, you know, things like competition, like they talk about competition working really well to motivate people. I mean, the hell am I doing here? What did I pitch tonight? Where's my hands? There. What did I pitch tonight? Was the whole thing about competing for fun. You know, and competing is just a simulation of violence. That's all it is. Like, there's an instinct in us to potentially get violent with other people, and everyone falls prey to it at some point or another, you know. And it's like, yeah, it has no functional place in a civilized society, yet we get caught up in it anyway just because it's one way that we definitely know we can get better at things if we give ourselves targets to go against. And it might be, those targets might be other people, which is kind of unhealthy, but like, you know, we do it anyway. Ryan said, can confirm that Get It warning scared me. Yeah, I should do something about that. Jackson, hello. Oh, how's it going? Jackson's doing some work with me this year on game playing AI stuff, actually. So he might also be in the might be taking part in this. I don't know, depending if he's too busy with other stuff. Halogen looked into this c.lang file, controls the syntax highlighting categories for Get It, and while making his own theme, I just gendered you when I don't know. While making your own theme and stuff, has a whole bunch of to-dos and stuff. Yeah, it's got like empty stuff in it. Yeah. And Evan Williams was like, yes. Text editors are not that important. Abraham, GTK warning, cannot open display. Yeah. Nicole, still in this slide, you took a nap. How could you take a nap at this time of night and get back up? You should like, I figure if I'm gonna take a nap at this time of night, I won't wake up until the next day, right? What was I gonna say? Oh, Jackson, co-stream. Yeah, maybe we can do something. Maybe we can do something and talk about, I don't know. Maybe we'll see where you get to. We can talk about the research that we're doing. Jackson's doing a taste of research with me, which will be on game playing AI stuff. And we'll see later on in the year. Also see whether I'm still streaming by then when I get busier. This thing is like good because like I'm in between subjects. But once I start in another subject, there's a chance this stream will just evaporate because I'll be like, no time for that. Okay. It's now 11:40. We've done our requisite 3.5 hours of stream that I always do. Let's wrap it up there. What I might do next time is I'll decide what games we're going to play. Because we'll play some games. Because I think that, like, you know, I've been doing back and forth between like sort of academic-y kind of things and just chill out things. And so you know, we've done one of these which is pretty heavy, and obviously a lot more work has to be done by us before I can present you anything more here. So the next thing I'm going to present you on something like this will be a plan and a start date and stuff like that. Obviously that's not going to happen within a week. So next week we'll have like more of a chill thing. I'll see what's cool on Steam or what I've bought previously that I haven't installed, because I've got plenty of that stuff lying around. And we'll play some games and stuff. Halogen, oh, they, them. Sorry about that. Yes, so I did gender you incorrectly. Also, same person as Jennifer of Comp1. Of the forms. How'd that stuff go? Ping me later and we'll talk about the data you collected, and we can actually go over it if you want. We can analyze that data. We could do that on stream. Yes. If you want to. We could do that on stream. Oh, Nicole wants me to play Minecraft. I think that'd be really funny because I have a feeling that the slight generation gap between yourselves and myself puts the majority of you at expert levels of Minecrafting capability and me at complete novice. So it's going to be one of those streams where you just laugh at me the whole time. And I think that'll be hilarious. That'd be cool. Yeah. So let's put it on the list. If it's going to be entertaining, let's do it. So a couple of things that we might do in the future. So Halogen put together a survey of Comp 1511 students pretty soon after the first assignment, asking about the kind of things people did on the assignment. So they were trying to figure out what kind of level of effort was average for what people were doing, and what kind of, I guess, like thought processes and stuff people were putting into it. So what we could do is we could look at your results, and what I can do is I can show you how we might actually statistically analyze something like that. I'm not that good at it. I haven't done that much statistical research, but I've done enough to at least be able to look at some numbers and go, can we glean information from this? Or is this mostly outliers? Or did we get enough data to really know what's going on? And I think you got at least 10% of the class, which means you've got like, 70, 80 people. I think that's plenty. That's plenty enough for us to read some trends into it. But also it's a good opportunity to talk about bias as well, because every time you collect information, you have to kind of think about what the biases are behind it, how they're going to, what would I call it? Corrupt the data. Corrupt is a strong word. Shift the data maybe towards or away from what you think. Also, confirmation bias that we have within ourselves is like, we think this, and then we'll only accept the data that supports it. And Ada said there's a really cool PyCon talk with Python and Minecraft. Yeah, that'd be cool. And Jackson saying Redstone computer. I think if it's like the full-on programming version of Minecraft, that's probably going to be easier for me to handle. Although, it's not like I can't play survival games as well. I think it'll just be funny for you to watch me play Minecraft. Evan saying I should make an 8-bit adder. That'd be funny. Oh, or Halogen saying it's mostly about style, like function numbers, line counts, and stuff. Still worth looking at. Let's touch base. I think we're both on the CSC Soc Discord. We'll talk about that. If it's feasible to get everything together for next week, we could look at it. But I think maybe next week will be a chill week, and maybe the week after. Especially because you said you've got other work you're doing at the moment, so we don't have to launch into it. But it's something we can do. So I'll put like Minecraft on the potential list. Things that you can laugh at me about. You know what we're going to have to do? If we do Minecraft, we'll have to spend some time in the stream on a game that I know really well so that I can like regain my regain my composure with something that I can win at. Kaichi is saying, I think I can change my calendar event to 3.5 hours instead of 2. I've already done that. Because I know that I always drift. Abraham's, next thing you know, Mark becomes a Minecraft speedrunner. Yeah. Alright, so Halogen, you said you're going to potentially look at the data later in the coming week. Alright. Good. We've got some cool ideas for what we're going to do in the future. And we also have these ongoing projects. Like at some point, I will give you an update on where I'm going with graphics. And I'll give you an update on this competition layout and the infrastructure we've started to do in the back end and stuff like that. Because this one I think we're going to do soonish. I was potentially going to start the first round before term started, but that's like only a week away. Well, it's a week and a half till term starts, so maybe we'll see how we go. I don't think we'll start round 1 that soon, but soonish. Yeah. Abraham said you will unironically host a server. That would actually be pretty funny. Okay, so if we do a Minecraft game, then we make sure the server is visible and public, and then everyone on stream can join. Because Minecraft is one of those games that, like, everyone can hop in, even if you don't feel effective in it or anything like it. You can still just hop in and watch what everyone else is doing. Oh, well, Zach's already been working on it. I didn't even give you a very solid plan. You're already working on it. That's pretty cool. Okay. All right, I will wrap it up there. Thank you for coming along, everyone. Lots of fun. I hope you enjoyed Chicken Cam. Let's give Chicken a pat before we head off. Hello. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thank you all, and I'll see you next week. I'll post up something midweek on the YouTube channel just to let everyone know what we're doing next week. But I think it'll be pretty chill. It might involve Minecraft.